Hello, 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 everybody. This is TACIS. It's the Transatlantic call-in show where we are two trans people who take your phone calls and answer your questions about trans stuff. Today is July 23rd, 2026. And today I'm joined, Luxander Moss is me, and I'm joined by Dr. Jey McCreight, who's a first-time guest. Hello. How are you doing it
Whoa.
today?
Good. Thanks for having me on here. I feel like this was inevitable at some point, so I'm glad we're making it happen.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, so you are a geneticist and you happen to be trans, and you've recently started doing trans activism specifically, but you've been a public speaker or like at least a science communicator for a really long time. I know you had a blog way back in the day in the Atheism Plus times many, many years ago. So you've been in the atheist community as well for forever.
Yeah, not even the Atheist Plus times. I'm technically where that started. That that was
Yeah.
my branding on my blog. It used to be known as Blag Hag. Obviously, some things have changed. I'm a little less of a hag, and maybe another word I won't say
Yeah.
on here.
Yeah, not this early in the show, give it a few minutes.
Yeah, but yeah, I used to be a blogger, a skeptic feminist blogger back in the day. And once I graduated and went off to grad school, I focused on science instead. Got my PhD in studying human genetics and evolutionary biology at the University of Washington. And then for about the past decade or so, I've been doing communications and marketing at a lot of different biotech companies. Like I was at 23andMe for a while. Those are other stories I could tell. I was at Google's precision health spinoff company, Verily, for a bit, at a cancer genetic testing company most recently. And this year I decided to kind of go rogue given what was going on politically. Uh, a long time, I kept asking myself, why is no one speaking up and fighting all this nonsense about biological sex being binary? Because I literally studied the evolution of sex and human population genetics, and I know these things are much more complicated
Yeah.
than people say. And I'm like, wait, it's because I'm the oldest trans geneticist out there. And I'm the only one who's a science communicator. Everyone else rather be pipetting in a lab or programming at a computer, and I'm the one who actually likes talking. So I decided to start a platform called Beyond X and Y to do some science communication around trans issues, and that's why I'm here today to hopefully field some cool questions from people. Caveat: I am a PhD. I am not a medical doctor, so anything here is not medical advice. Please still talk to your actual doctors, but I'll
Yeah.
try to educate from the science point of view.
Save your medical questions for when Dr. Ben is eventually back. I hear Dr. Ben is working 7 days a week right now at his residency, I think is what it's called, that phase of the medical training. But you know, all power to people who have that much drive and that much energy, because could never be me. But yeah, so we do have open lines right now. The number is on the screen, 720-619-2288. Also, pronouns. Do you have your he, they pronouns?
Yeah, they, them, he, him's fine too. The slight preference for they, them, but
Okay.
it's
We're
all good.
bringing the theys today. We're bringing the non-binary energy, okay?
They,
It's like
day.
also it's like very interesting, like femme non-binary and more like masculine presenting non-binary. I like that we're kind of representing both ends of that as well. Good stuff. Yeah, so some topics that we could get into today. We do have some rotating topics around on the bottom of the screen usually there, but what are some things? I like to field the whole like I mean, great conversation today would be chromosomes and intersex conditions. Like those would be some topics that we have some expertise on the show for today, and not just me with my very casual understanding of the topics. And we also kind of get into more broad things like, should trans kids have access to medicine? I would say yes. I think the science says yes. Like the medical science around this says that that's the right thing to do. And if you disagree with that, please call us. Also, we do have a web caller link in the description for if y'all are outside the US, but don't use it if you're inside the US. It doesn't work. So yeah, but we're still here taking calls, and we will be here for about 2.5 hours taking calls, and then we'll do super chats at the end. So get your super chats in if you want us to read them, $5 or more. And don't forget to like the video, because that immediately helps boost us in the algorithm. And if you're in the chat and you have a disagreement, come on and call in, because I'm not going to even read the chat, much less actually respond to anything you say there. So come on, if you want to have the conversations. Do you ever see, Jay, that whole thing happening nowadays where folks are like, oh, these leftists, you can't even have a conversation. You know, they're so shrill, or they immediately melt down, or they just yell at you and curse at you. And here we are, ready to have the conversations.
Yep,
And
we're
people don't
chill. I'm
call.
chill. You know, my friends always say that they wish that they could just put me and have me have lunch with more like random concerned mothers, because I am just such a nerdy, calm, non-threatening guy. And I've actually been introduced to family members who used to maybe have negative thoughts about trans people or just not understand, and they meet me and they're like, oh, well, he's just a nerd. He's fine. He's not
Yeah.
evil. So
A
hopefully maybe
harmless
that
nerd.
comes across. I just like talking about DNA and science, and it's like, yeah, it's a little non-threatening. So hopefully we have
Cool.
a good conversation
I
today.
am happy to be bad cop. Listen, I love being bad cop. We also have our polls that we can discuss. We've got a poll from last week and a poll from this week. Let me ping Arden because she is screening calls. Oh, no, she's listening. Okay. Oh, God. Oh, God. I forgot about this. This is, oh, my God. The Hegseth thing last week and being like, we're going to put all the troops, we're going to test all the troops testosterone, and if they have low testosterone, then we're going to supplement them, which kind of means that as official policy, we're going to be placing a large amount of our military on steroids, which I think is really interesting. What are your thoughts on this, Jay?
Oh boy, it's certainly a choice, because for cisgender men, if you are put on testosterone, what they say exogenously, aka you're adding it to your body, it's not what your testes are naturally producing.
Mhm.
It actually causes your testes to kind of shut down and shuts down sperm production and can lead to a lot of fertility issues.
Mhm.
So it's interesting that the right wants, you know, more people out there having babies and male virility, but in actuality, if they were to do this, it actually cause like great swaths of infertility amongst male soldiers who don't need T. Like the real answer is there's a broad range of what a good natural, like, you are healthy on it testosterone level is, even if you're just looking at cis men. And there are
Mhm.
some men who just they work totally fine with low levels. They don't need to have high levels of T. Their body is just chugging away, and that works for their particular body. This is
Mhm.
kind of what like the field of precision health as a whole is about, is that everyone is a little different and there isn't a catch-all remedy for everyone. And
Yep.
so this is why doctors, they usually don't start cis men on T unless there are other symptoms like depression,
Yeah.
energy, erectile dysfunction. And so to just blanket put everyone on T, I guess if you want to make all of our soldiers infertile, great. Like it shows someone who doesn't understand the actual biology behind it, which that's not a shocker to me, but yeah.
Yeah. It's so frustrating that it's like these are asymptomatic people being given this medicine that was like, you know, oh, it was expensive and it made our soldiers less battle ready when it was trans people, and like trans people receiving it for a medically necessary reason versus just giving it to soldiers who don't seem to have, or like you said, you know, if there's not accompanying depression or like sexual dysfunction or like, you know, I would even grant like balding or whatever. Like if you have like that situation, like I consider that as part of like gender dysphoria. So yeah, like there's all those kind of things, fatigue, that are actual symptoms of low testosterone or like low hormones in general, because people who like have had their gonads removed have this problem as well of like needing exogenous hormones. So yeah, it's so stupid. And they were like, they didn't like, oh, this is so expensive, we don't want to pay for it. Like, and now they're just like, no, we're gonna pay for it. I don't. It's I could go on forever, I think.
Yeah, and a fun fact that was called out by the chat that I want to plus one is that
Sure.
when you have like extra high levels of testosterone, like in cis men, your body converts that into estrogen. And so you also then start getting problems of like gynecomastia, where it's like you grow breasts as men. And so like you actually could be accidentally transing your cis male soldiers who don't want to. It's just it's not good science. It's not good medical care.
No, yeah. Well, yeah. So anyway, um, okay, I'm actually reading the question. How can our troops be battle ready with low T? Give troops gender affirming care. Okay, I can see the joke in the answers here. Real men don't need T. Either way you answered, I appreciate. Thank you very much for your comments on the community post as well. And we have a poll from this week as well. We're not going to get into it right now, but we're just going to float this, and there should be a version of this in the chat for you to vote on as well, if you want to contribute there. And if you want to leave your little comments on the post on the other tab on our channel, that's cool too. Will the Republicans just get rid of all books to combat LGBT in schools? Do you think maybe they'll just get rid of all books? Does that seem silly? Let us know in the comments. We will talk about it later. There is a reason that we've asked this seemingly ridiculous question. And I don't know. It's like it depends on whether you're going to be surprised or not. So we'll just tease that for now. All right, I'm looking at the calls that we have available right now. I guess we only have really one call that's available right now, but that's a good way to start. Lines are still open, everybody, and we are primarily looking to have debate conversations. So if you're calling in with more like an advice question, we only usually save like 2 lines for that. So if you call in, don't be surprised if that's already filled up for the time being. But yeah, we want to hit those debates, like the video, etc., to make sure that boosts us in the algorithm. That immediately helps us get more calls in. So yeah, we appreciate all of the interaction in the chat. You guys are the best, and that's why we're here. Anyway, let's go ahead and talk to Mav, he, they pronouns from California, who wants to talk about top surgery. Mav, you are live with Luxander and Dr. Jey McCreight. How is it going?
Hi, I'm doing well. I hope you guys are doing well too. And sorry, I meant that in a general way.
No, it's all good. Okay, so you want to talk about top surgery and specifically social stigma around it, is that right?
Yeah, and also if there's any data about how people have had like reactions to it in public, because I was reading some Reddit posts that some people who are visibly trans in public, or they take their shirt off like at the beach, they get like people coming up to them and being like, "Oh, you're so brave," and they're like, "I'm just trying to take my shirt off at the beach and be like, you know, casual about it." You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is interesting that more awareness around trans people has actually made it less possible for us to be invisible. That like, you know, previously somebody might have been like, "Whoa, what happened to you?" seeing the scars. Now they're like, "Oh, I see that that's top surgery scars." But I haven't had top surgery, so I'll let Jay get in on this one.
Yeah, interesting question, Mav. Thanks for asking that. I'll say I don't know any studies that have been done. There might be out there. I just haven't personally read any. I can talk from my personal experience, at least, as someone who's had top surgery. And I'll say for me, it has depended on the timeline we're in. So like when I first had top surgery, there wasn't as much trans mass representation out there. I think people still didn't think trans men even existed. They thought trans women were the only type of trans person. And so when I was out and about with my shirt off, I remember I was at an International Mr. Leather, which is hosted here in Chicago. And I'm thus amongst a bunch of cis gay men. So it was queer people. And I was trying on a harness, actually. That's why my shirt was off. And this older gay man who was like running the shop came up to me and was like, "Oh, baby, what happened to you? Like, what accident were you in?" And I'm like,
yeah.
And I remember just kind of looking at him, bemused, like, I'm in queer circles. I thought you would know. Just thinking this, and a younger person who's working with him like pulled him aside, like, "No, he's trans." And he had like a blank look on his face, and then the person had to be like, they used to be female. They had to like explain it, and then he was like, "Oh," and I will say like that happened maybe 4 years ago, and I don't really get those reactions anymore. I have occasionally gotten the like, "You're brave," but I'll also say I think it's really dependent on where you are. So if I'm out here in Chicago at Hollywood Beach, which is a queer beach, I'll say most people don't remark on it at all. Or at most, maybe I get someone just doing a little like double take look at me because I catch their eye, and they're like, "Oh, a trans guy's at this beach." It's not just a bunch of cis gay men. But I've also, about a year and a half ago, I was on vacation in New Orleans, and I was sitting at a pool with the rest of my friends who in this group were just other cis people. And boy, was I getting stared at by the older white people, the cis het people at that pool who had never clearly seen a trans person before. And they didn't approach me about it, but it was clearly very uncomfortable. So I think it depends where you are in the country. But I've heard stories from cis men who have gotten breast reductions because they had more fat that was developing breast tissue. And again, this is a type of gender affirming care, even for cis people. And they have now started getting confused as trans men because our visibility is higher. And so I've heard from some of these men, like the sympathy they have, they're like, wow, people assume I'm trans and I don't always get treated well, but that makes me empathetic for trans people because it's unfair, even though I'm not that. So I'd be curious. I'll have to go look it up after the show to see if there's any actual scientific studies on perception yet, because I don't know.
Oh, that was very interesting that you said that, like where you are on vacation, you got different reactions. I personally have a few stories. I don't know if I have time, but I can share one of them if you want.
Yeah, I'm down for a story.
Sure.
Okay, so I live in a fairly conservative area. The further into, there's like two towns that mesh into one where I live, and there's the more conservative town, which I kind of stay away from. But let's just say I was at a gym in the more conservative town that I'm near, and I was taking my rash guard with me from the pool. I took it off and I put it on the side because I was like, this is kind of dragging me down when I'm doing my swimming. So I got out of the pool. No one really stared at me, but then I was looking for pool noodles. So I got out of the pool and I asked this one guy, where are the pool noodles? And he just looked at me with this blank stare and then at my chest and then back up at me. And I was like, and then he just passed by and didn't answer. And I was like, what the fuck? And that was one of those things where I think he was part of the older generation and he probably didn't know what to think. And I don't know what his reaction was, if he was like, if it was negative or positive, or if he just didn't know what to say, so he just ignored me. But at this point, I have a few other times where I've done that before, and I've never gotten the "you're brave" thing, but I've been at Pride and I took my shirt off and I could tell that there was another visibly trans-masked person who was looking at me. But I think they were curious and they wanted to know more, but they just didn't come up to me and ask. So, you know, I'm very open about like my top surgery. Personally, if people ask me questions about it, I don't really have any, especially if they're another trans person and they want to know more. Like, I'm very open to talking about it because it might help them find information they need. So that's kind of the reactions I've had. They've been very mixed. Personally, I haven't had any, like, anybody yell at me or cuss me out or say any slurs to me, which has been good. But I'm also waiting to get another procedure done on my scars that reduces the thickness and pinkness of my scars, because my top surgery scars are a little hypertrophic. I didn't take very good care of them, unfortunately. And I need to put more work into finding an esthetician who can take a like CO2 laser to them and kind of reduce the appearance of them.
Sure.
And then after that, I was going to get a tattoo on it, but I was hoping that way I could go stealth, because I don't really, I mean, I know some people are proud of their scars, but for me, I would rather just be able to take my shirt off without the chances of getting stared at, because I've been stared at before and it just causes more mental, you know, angst than it's worth for me. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's totally personal choice. And I also just want to say sympathies for like the weird reaction you got from that guy. I think probably a combo of, you know, a lot of people don't know trans men exist, or it's just like confusion, or they've never met one in person, or even just, you know, people don't treat, not saying this is a disability, but people don't treat disabled people very nice. They stare often if you have a visible disability, and if you have scars, a lot of people just, you know, don't always react the best way to that. Personally, I also have very hypertrophic scarring, but I'm proud of it. Kind of like I like that I have it, but that's also personally I joke I'm the tallest trans man in existence. I'm 5'11",
Yeah.
and as you see, I went bald pretty quickly and have a beard, and so I usually quote unquote pass, even though I'm not trying to be stealthy, and so I often feel like in queer spaces I get seen as a cis gay man, and I actually want people to know I'm trans. So I like that I have very visible scars. But I also totally respect trans guys who want to be stealth, because we just live in a reality of unsafety right now in the U.S., especially with just all the stuff going on. So I totally understand.
Yeah, I've seen some really sick tattoos. Like, I think especially if you get a tattoo that's beyond just that area of like directly on top of the scars, like getting a bigger chest piece, because I feel like those just really blend in really nicely. And especially if your tattooist is like familiar with tattooing over scar tissue, like some tattooists kind of specialize in helping people with like post surgical recovery and covering their scars and stuff. So yeah, I would definitely say that there are options that, I mean, it's not going to be cheap, obviously. Getting a large tattoo across your entire chest is expensive, but yeah, that there is an option to stealth in that, like, and it is one of the unfortunate things about the increased visibility is that, like, oh, okay, well, you used to be able to just kind of chill under the radar, and now you can't so much. But yeah, and I hope that that gives you an opportunity. Like, I always say this when people are transitioning at whatever phase, often people are asking this really early on, but use it as an opportunity to like further explore like a self fulfillment of like, what kind of big tattoo do I want, you know, and let that be an opportunity for like creative exploration. And go like, well, what would actually look good, or what would fit, or like, what's the vibe that I want this to have? What do I want to present instead of presenting these scars? So yeah, just treat it like an opportunity and not like a burden is kind of the thing that I'm driving towards.
Oh, thank you. I was personally thinking about getting like a raven or a crow, like with its wings spread apart. I don't know,
I love
something
that.
like that.
That's sick, dude.
Yeah. Thank you.
I love it. Very cool. Well, Mav,
Yeah.
do you have any closing thoughts before we move on to our next call?
I just want to ask if, well, maybe this could be another call, but like, is it common for the nipple grafts on there to be a little like the edges to be a little bit hypertrophic too? Because on mine they're a little hypertrophic, and I just wanted to hear from somebody else who's had. I don't know if you got nipple grafts or something.
Yeah, I did, and I think that's pretty normal, common also. And I think the other thing is that people, there's variation in how much a person tends to scar or not. And I just tend to be a person where if I do get a cut, I do scar more. So I don't think it's unheard of. Yeah.
I think if you're prone to
Okay.
hypertrophic scarring, then wherever you get scars, it's likely to happen. So if you have hypertrophic scars underneath, then it makes sense for them to be around the nipple grafts too. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, that's all I wanted to know. I appreciate you guys taking my call, and honestly, it's been really interesting to listen to the show, and I really appreciate what you're doing for the community.
Hell yeah. Well,
Thanks.
thanks,
Yeah.
Mav, and good luck out there. We appreciate you.
Yeah. Good luck.
Yeah, you too. Have a good one. Bye.
Bye. Okay, we do have some interesting calls queued up. I am very much looking forward to getting into some of these. Why don't we really quick though look at our poll from last week, or sorry, from this week's poll, dive into that a little bit, and because this seems silly, right? Like this seems ridiculous, but I went and saw reported by Aaron in the morning, pretty recently. I don't know if it was an article that came out today, but Clay County School District in Florida considers getting rid of libraries in response to LGBTQ books. So
Like,
it turns out they will just try to get rid of all the books to combat LGBT in schools.
I mean, Fahrenheit 451 was written for a reason, right?
Yeah.
I think, you see a lot of censorship out there, even beyond LGBTQ issues. So this doesn't even surprise me. I hate, sadly.
I know. Yeah. And it shows the relationship that a lot of these things have to one another, that we have this anti-intellectualism simultaneously with the anti-trans stuff. And like we know as people who talk about the issue that anti-trans rhetoric is deeply anti-science. Like that you have to be rejecting scientific rigor and consensus in order to come to a transphobic position that like people shouldn't be on this care or that it's just delusional or whatever. Yeah, so it is kind of just interesting to see it laid out in a much more clear example that that you don't need to know a lot about trans science to know that this is a relationship between anti-intellectualism and anti-LGBT. So yeah, that's my most interesting thought about it, I guess.
Yeah, and we see that it's not only trans folk that they're coming for, but like they being Republicans in power right now have been dismantling science as a whole, as an institution, just coming for reducing amount of grant money that goes out to studies. They're trying to make it so that a political board has to approve any research that's happened to make sure it's aligned with government interests, which is something that happened in Russia with Lysenkoism and basically decimated their entire scientific establishment and made, whole crops wither because they weren't actually using science. It was just a total nightmare. And that's what they want in the US, just because they're anti-truth fundamentally. And that's why they come for science. That's why they come for education and books and trans folk, is because if you just get rid of truth, and truth is what the government says, it's easier to control people if people aren't educated and don't have scientists telling them the reality of what's going on. So it's all interconnected.
Yeah. And did you see, this is a little bit of a detour, but did you see the thing that went around a few months back of that girl who submitted the assignment at an Oklahoma college? And she was failed on the assignment by the non-binary TA. Yeah. I feel like that's also one of the ways in which they're eroding education. Like, she did not even do the assignment. I don't know if you looked into it in detail.
That's what I was going to say, was that I can't remember what the assignment was, but I remember that her essay that she turned in was basically like, God is good, God is real, the end. And it had nothing to do with the prompt of the assignment whatsoever. Yeah. It was like complete non sequitur. And her mother is a lawyer who is like involved in these anti-LGBTQ crusades.
I think it was Jan 6. Like, I think that her mom is a Jan 6 defending lawyer.
Yes. And so it was clearly like mom told daughter, hey, you have a non-binary TA, write about God, they'll fail you, and then we sue them. And this poor TA is actually just trying to do their job and then gets swept up in all this. And
yeah, and I think they lost their job actually at the end of that whole process.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's a modern lavender scare. Like, we went through this with McCarthyism, where they got all the gays out of government and assumed they're all just evil communists. And we see it's like the same exact arguments are happening over again. It's the same reason why they ban gender affirming care and trans people from the military, because if you just remove all the people who may be dissenters or voices of reason, it's easier to keep the narrative going. So, yeah, some scary stuff we're dealing with right now, just with what's happening. But I think it's useful to name it and show that, like, history has seen this happen before. Yeah. And we have rebounded from it before, is like the optimistic note I'll put out there. And that, that all happened, but we still had progress afterward, even if we took a step backwards.
Yeah.
So,
And it's important to keep speaking truth about it for so long as we can do that.
Yeah.
So with all of like chilling free speech stuff going on right now, just gonna keep talking about it until they arrest us. Like that's what we're gonna do. So thanks so much for participating in the chat and in the poll there. We appreciate y'all. We'll get a final result for this next week, of course. But we do have a kind of spicy call waiting that I'm interested to get into. So when we get out of the poll, we will start talking about that. Where is my chat? There it is. There we go. Oh my God, I was going to say something. Oh yeah, by the way, if you guys have not hit the like button, hit the like button, please. It's quick, it's easy, it's free, and it helps the show. And at the end of the show, we will switch back and forth reading aloud your $5 or more super chats. Are we doing the silly game today, Arden? Are we? I don't know if she's okay. She's just got done screening. Arden, are we doing the silly game today? Are we gonna do that?
I expected to, but
Okay,
it's your
cool.
guys' call.
Yeah. So Jay, I guess let's brief you on this. So we usually have a competition in the super chats where when they do a super chat that we're gonna read aloud, they can include hashtag team whoever, and they can kind of vote between the two hosts. And whoever loses that vote has to like defend a silly position for 2 minutes at the end of the show, improvisationally. So it's always silly stuff like bisexuals should be tax exempt or something like that.
Sure.
Is that something you're on board with?
Yeah, I'm down. I'll always do something silly.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun, and it like promotes more interaction for the show and everything. So don't forget to get those $5 or more super chats in. No hashtag, no vote, everybody. Hashtag Team Lux or hashtag Team J. J is spelled with an E. And yeah, so we are ready to get into our next call. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay. I am going to pick oh my God, where did it go? I'm going to talk to Alexander. Alexander from Norway wants to talk about cancel culture. Alexander, you are live on the line with Luxander and Dr. Jey McCreight. How's it going?
Hello.
Hi. Yes, I can hear you just fine. Why don't you lay out your topic for us? Give us a little brief overview.
Yeah, so I want to talk about pronouns and the sort of cancel culture, or that people get so offended by as little as misgendering. Like, I assume the previous caller want to be like referred to as maybe she, her, if they transitioned to a female, if there were a male, or you have previously stated that you find it irritating in the start of your transition journey to that people do not use your preferred pronouns.
Sure. I mean, I would not necessarily frame it as being offended. I've always kind of thought that that's weird to frame it, because I feel like taking offense is more of like a moral thing. Like, I am offended by the fact that our government lets children not have access to food sometimes. Like, like we don't do enough to fix that, and that's offensive to me. When I'm misgendered, and this was more the case many years ago, I don't care as much now, but it's more like painful or like hurtful or feels disrespectful rather than being like offended. Does that make sense, or does that recontextualize this at all? And Jay, feel free to jump in if you want to.
I was going to just plus one that I think I had the same experience of like when I first came out, it hurt me more. And I think it comes from a place of trans people spend so many years of their life just trying to figure out, why do we feel different? Why do we feel this way? And once you finally have that eureka light bulb moment, you are so excited to finally live your life in a way that feels true to you. And when people, I think it's especially when people are doing it out of malice instead of by mistake, it's hurtful, it's disrespectful. But now I'm at a point where I pass as a man. No one ever she, hers me or ma'ams me. And if it happens from someone who knows me, and like they maybe like a distant family member who hasn't seen me in a while, at this point I just kind of like laugh, because it makes you look like you're calling this man with the beard she, like you're the one who looks like what's going on up there. So I personally don't see it as a cancel culture thing. I see it as just treating someone with respect. And I think a lot of trans people, we can tell when someone's making an effort or not. And so if it's a mistake, but then you correct the mistake, I think we tend to treat that with a little more grace than if you are stubbornly doing it because you think my gender is actually X. And that's when it becomes hurtful, if that makes sense.
Like, while I don't have a problem using people's pronouns, I don't think anybody should be expected to do so. Also, like, I mean, nobody's going around asking people for their pronouns before an interaction, and then if that person doesn't like that you refer to them as something they don't want to be referred to, then they're going to be, I don't know, mad or doesn't like that. And
Well, people
so
are going to have
go
feelings
ahead.
about things, and whether they have those feelings is not the problem. I want to be clear about that. So if what you're saying is like, then people have a tantrum, and I think that that kind of public display just from being misgendered is inappropriate. Like, we're all familiar with the video of the lady in the GameStop, right? That is like not something that happens regularly. And honestly, I think that most of the videos that are going around now of those kind of explosive meltdowns are literally just fake. Like, I think that it's just outrage bait that's fake. I think that about a lot of stuff on the internet right now, though, because I'm like, I'm sitting here watching this video and they are making money off of the time that I'm spending watching this video. So, yeah, I think people are allowed to feel however they want to feel about being misgendered. And I don't really understand the logic behind taking issue with that. Like, that I am allowed to be hurt when somebody does something that I view as disrespectful. In the same way that, like, if you work with somebody who is called William and he prefers to be called William and you start calling him Billy and he's like, I would really appreciate it if you did not do that. That's not respectful for me. And you continued to do it. He would have a reasonable justification to go to your HR and be like, this person is persistently disrespecting me in a way that I find it to be harassment. Trans people are looking for that same level of respect.
Yeah, but like when I am going to talk to a person, I'm going to go for what I can see, like sex, and I can see that you have masculine traits. Then I'm going to go off what I can see. And like, how can I know you're a he or a him or she, her, or a Caesar or they, them, or how many pronouns that they are? Like, it's exhausting, and for you not knowing which one the person you're interacting with you to use, whilst there being hundreds of pronouns to choose from, and then be labeled as some sort of phobic, like transphobic, for doing so. It's deranged. It really is, and that's why people have had enough about this. They no longer want to participate in that worldview where you could go from the remainder of the conversation and refer to me as like those things.
I think you're presenting a bit of a straw man of what actually happens, though. Like, I know even me, when I go to trans space, I might make an assumption on what someone's pronouns are and maybe say she, and then usually what happens if I'm wrong, they'll just be like, oh, they, and I'm like, oh, okay, they, and then we just keep talking and no one's getting mad, no one's getting hurt.
Yeah.
That's what I've had happen dozens, hundreds of times. Like, I am trans and I've gotten people's pronouns wrong, or I've had to be corrected maybe if I forgot. I only introduced to them once before and I forgot they prefer they, them, or she, her. And it's just, again, I think we see, like you said, those outrage videos online, and that's just not what's happening in everyday conversation. Like, I never introduce myself with my pronouns. I'm not usually asking people what their pronouns are. It's usually just people politely correcting and then being like, oh, okay. Just like if we had said, hey, Alex, A-Rod, how's it going? And you were like, oh no, I prefer Alexander. We would have then been like, oh, okay, sorry, Alexander, or I think it's just people being respectful of each other.
I also don't even correct people. Like, just to give the other perspective on that, I'm non-binary, but people assume that I'm female and they call me she, her. And I am at this point where I'm like, I don't even correct people unless I feel comfortable with them, especially a cis person. Like, any random cis person, I don't care. I go to the gym and there's this one coworker there at the gym who always like greets me, and he's always like, hey girl, how's it going? And I am not going to correct that old man. Like, just to be clear, most of the time I'm like, it does not matter to me what stranger thinks about my gender. That's hard fought. I did not used to feel that way. But yeah, so I don't really know where this is coming from. This idea that, oh my God, it's deranged that you would, like, nobody is getting pissed off at somebody making a reflexive judgment. I guess like a follow-up question I would have for you, Alexander, is if you go off of appearance, which a lot of people do, and so do we a lot of the times, right? Do you support robust access to gender-affirming care to make sure that people can be seen as the gender that they're transitioning into with ease?
No, because like the previous caller, he talked
that
about
kind of makes you an asshole a little bit, just to be clear.
Well, if you're going to go to the condescending type of talk, we're not going to have a proper conversation here.
Well, let me explain. Let me explain what I'm trying to say here. If you're saying if trans people want to be called by the gender that they want to be called by, then they have to look that way. But you don't support robust access to gender affirming care that helps people be perceived as the gender that they want to be perceived, then that's called a catch-22. It's like not a nice way to frame things for trans people, because then what are we supposed to do? If we don't look like the gender that we want to look like, and you are mad at the idea that we might correct you on our pronouns in day-to-day conversation, what are we supposed to do?
Yeah, because the person, and probably you have scars because you wanted to get some physical traits, but you are a healthy person. You was born healthy and you have healthy parts of your body. You do not need to self-harm yourself into getting some traits that you like.
Do you want to talk about dysphoria, Dr. J?
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
I think the first thing I just want to call it there is it's not self-harm, and there's no debate across any major medical organization has shown that gender-affirming care is both life-saving and effective, and has the lowest rates of regret of any medical procedure. There are more people who regret getting chemotherapy or hip replacements or a list of other
having children,
having a tattoo. They all have way higher regret rates than gender affirming care. And I know this both as a scientist who knows the legitimacy of these scientific organizations and the mountains of evidence and studies that have been done on it, but also as someone who's personally gotten it and has seen, once I had top surgery, started on testosterone, I was so much happier as a person. I went from having lifelong depression and anxiety to basically having that cured the moment I started gender affirming care, especially once I got to the point where I looked masculine enough for people to be he/himming me regularly and seeing me as the gender I always felt like I was. And the reality is, biology is really complicated, and there are people who are born with their brains baked in a way that expects a different body than the one we ended up with. And it is much easier to change the body, and much preferable to those people to change the body than to try to change their brain and sense of identity. And when you undergo gender affirming care, you actually have lower rates of self-harm and lower rates of suicidal ideation. So you personally might perceive it that way, but not only would all trans people disagree with you, but all medical professionals would disagree with you as well. And there's a point where I don't know what more to say. If we trust the experts who actually study the science behind it.
I want to piggyback on that really quick before you respond, Alexander, because dysphoria is not healthy. The fact that just because there's no cancer in the breast tissue doesn't mean that having the breast tissue is healthy for the body. Because if that particular part of the body is causing a mental distress, that's the clinical diagnosis, you have to have like a clinical level of distress associated with your gender dysphoria to be able to get these surgeries. We have a robust process that people have to go through to get the surgeries. That's not healthy. If you are avoiding showering because this part of your body is causing you distress, or if you're missing out on social opportunities because you don't want to go out because you might get misgendered. So that's that's why we say like medically necessary care, because that's not healthy. How do you respond?
Yeah, but like you brought up like experts and doctors and all that. There is a reason why the UK banned puberty blockers in December 2024, and Finland prioritizes psychological treatment, and Sweden prohibits treatment.
Sweden doesn't prohibit treatment, I don't believe, actually. I know people who live in Sweden. Yeah, so there was clear bias. We've very thoroughly gone over this when it was more new information to the CAS review. Just deliberately did not choose anything in the literature that, even if it was good evidence, that could support the idea that gender affirming care is good for people and for children. Like, it was very clearly biased. Hillary Cass had a close relationship with somebody who is very well known as like the money behind anti-trans movements. So yeah, it was politically motivated, to be clear. It's very obviously politically motivated that they have backtracked on this. So don't mistake a political policy for a scientific truth is the
Yeah.
bottom line.
Yeah. And you can always find, 3 people who happen to have PhDs who are politically motivated and will write a certain statement for you. And then what is these 3 people who disagree with literally 100,000 other experts? Like, which is the truth there? It's like if you found 3 people who believe the earth is flat or evolution was a lie versus the resounding pile of evidence that the earth is round and evolution is real. You can always cherry pick studies, and that's what we're seeing with stuff like the CAS report. Especially UK is very politically motivated right now.
Yeah, literally J.K. Rowling is singularly funding all of this anti-trans pressure. Like there is a billionaire funding all of that politically motivated shifting over there. So I don't think that's a reliable source for here's why it's medically not necessary or medically harmful.
UK is a country, and you're citing a few doctors. But anyways, with the pronouns,
the entire scientific consensus and medical consensus on the topic agrees that gender affirming care is the thing that helps trans people. You're saying I'm not citing just a couple of people. I'm citing the rigorous process and the testing that we've done and the fact that we've tried other treatments. Alexander, I don't know if you know this, but we've tried to just talk people out of it. We've tried to give them shock therapy. We've tried to put them on antipsychotic medication. Gender affirming care is the treatment. Jay wants to get in on something here.
Oh yeah, Alexander, I'm going to read you right now every medical organization who supports gender affirming care: American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, American Academy of Dermatology, of Family Physicians, of Nursing, of Pediatrics, of Physician Assistants, American College Health Association, American College of Nurse Midwives, American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, of Physicians, American Counseling Association, American Heart Association. This is going to take a while. And these are all tens of thousands of doctors per association. American Medical Association, Medical Student Association, Nurses Association, Osteopathic, Psychiatric, Psychological, Public Health, Society of Plastic Surgeons, Endocrine Society, Federation of Pediatric Organizations, Nurse Practitioners in Women's Health, Social Workers, Correctional Healthcare, Pediatric Endocrine Society. Have you got this point? Even the Society for Study of Evolution piped in, and they don't even usually do medical stuff. Those are all tens of thousands of medical professionals per society, and they all say gender affirming care as evidence-based care. So why do you think 100,000 scientists are saying this versus you?
Well, it's just not me. It's a lot of people, especially on the right wing. But those people you cited and those organizations could also be politically motivated. Like you're saying that my source was probably politically motivated. So can yours.
Sure.
What would the motivation be?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Why do you think scientists would want to just trans people?
Yeah, why would hundreds of thousands of people conspire on this if it wasn't true? Because what we're doing is assuming that they've done the work and they've observed the evidence and they've come to a conclusion based on the evidence, not that they have a bias and they're searching for the evidence. So why would they start with the position that trans care is good and then search for evidence to fulfill that conclusion? What bias or motivation would there be?
There's also right-wing people and doctors of other side of the political spectrum.
No, I agree. I agree with that, Alexander. What I'm asking you is, what do you think is the reason why? What do you think is the reason why there are people who are supporting trans care? If like I said, we're assuming that it's because they've studied this and they've come to a conclusion based on the data. What do you think would be the motivation for them to say trans affirming care? Why do they disagree with the Republicans? Let's not even talk about the Republicans and why they might have a bias against trans people. Let's focus on the pro-trans bias. Where do you think that's coming from?
Probably because I'm not sure, really. I don't know. But I believe it's because it's politically motivated.
What is the benefit politically?
Well, to some people might say it's an illness, you know, so they want to say like these people should not stay in society. They should be like locked up in a mental institution, put in a straitjacket, and fed through a tube. Like
I mean,
those,
that I do hear that from the right wing. Yes, that's
yeah.
what I hear from the right wing
We
about
are
trans
asking,
people.
why would hundreds of thousands of scientists, PhDs, and medical doctors all conspire to say transness is okay? Like, what is the motivation? And these are people who are not trans even. They are predominantly cisgender heterosexuals, not even queer in any way. Why would there be a grand conspiracy across all fields of medicine to make transness okay? Like, what's the benefit? What do scientists get out of it? Like, because if there was a conspiracy, like, why are they doing it?
I don't believe
Or
it's
is the
a
simpler
conspiracy,
answer
really.
just that?
I
Sorry,
think
cut
it's
you off.
more a bit politically motivated something, but they might be right, you know, and they might be right and say like, you guys might want to have the surgeries you want to have because it makes you feel XYZ, and therefore you will not kill yourself, you know. And like if we go back to the pronouns thing, like I have no problem taking the path of least resistance with most people and try to avoid conflict with them. But if somebody doesn't want to do that, for you to have to compel their speech into believing what, and like, so to blame a person for not playing into the viewpoint and value system of pronouns and frame them as transphobic, it's just unfair, because basically you're saying that you have to comply and compel a person's
Well, to be clear, Alexander,
enable another person's belief system.
I'm not making the argument that anyone should be compelled to do anything. If I'm asking for a basic level of respect, and if that is not possible for someone to be respectful, you know, like, I don't know what to do in that situation. If we're in like in a workplace and somebody doesn't want to call me by my pronouns, they can just use my name if they prefer. That's fine. There are ways to not harm the trans person without compelling speech. If somebody is like, I don't want to play along with this delusion, you know, like nobody's compelling speech. So I'm not sure where that's coming from. And also I had a follow-up thought, but I forgot what it was. So I'll just leave it at there.
Well, at the end of the day, when a person's own mental perception of something takes precedent over reality of a situation, is the moment you descend into chaos. And a person's subjective evaluation of anything should never overrule the objective existence of what something is.
But what we're saying is the objective point is that trans people exist. That sex is not a simple binary, that biology is actually the reason why some people are born trans, and it's why we have existed throughout human history and across all cultures, because the way biology works means some people are going to pop out trans. The societal choice is, are you cruel to those people, or do you let those people live in a way that doesn't feel horrible? And the horribleness usually comes from society denying the reality that biology is not a simple binary. I mean, the simplistic binary gender roles come from religion and culture and often fascism. It does not come from biology. This is even going into trans issues, but about 1% of the population is intersex and doesn't neatly fall into a male or female binary. And the question culturally is, are we cruel to those people, or do we accept that sometimes people pop out and don't fit into a neat category? Like, sometimes people are born with red hair 1% of the time, and we don't go on saying, well, the only natural hair colors are blondes and brunettes, and we're going to treat the redheads like freaks. I guess some people do that a little bit, but not not to the extent of trans people. It's society that gets upset about it. So when you're saying we are denying like objective truth. The objective truth is trans people are born and exist.
Yeah. I remembered what I was going to say earlier. I want to just get this in really quick. It is transphobic to be anti-trans. Like, if you don't want to use someone's pronouns because you think that person is delusional, that is anti-trans. And I don't care what you want to call it, but like either anti-trans or transphobic, or if you want to use something that feels sanitized, you can say cis-sexist. That's like an academic term that exists, but it simply is transphobic to be like, I don't want to use your pronouns because I don't think trans people exist, you know?
Would you consider yourself a woman or a trans woman?
Oh, I'm non-binary. I get mistaken for a trans woman all the time. So
Okay,
that's my lot in life. Or a cis woman. Yeah. People either think I'm a cis woman or a trans woman most of the time, but I'm non-binary.
Okay, because you look like a woman, and therefore I would use she, her to you, and not whatever pronouns you use.
Yeah, and that happens all the time. And I don't bother to correct most people.
So, Alexander, what pronouns would you use for me? I'm just curious.
He, him.
Great. You affirmed my delusional gender because I was born female and I'm a trans man. So you said you didn't want to conform to my delusion, but like you clearly registered and used pronouns that I'm fine with. How does that make you feel?
But I also said that I believe that you should go with what you can observably see. I can see that you are beard and you look like more like a man than a woman.
But you also think that trans people shouldn't have access to this medical care. So you think that Jay shouldn't have been able to make those changes to look more masculine.
Well,
and also to be clear, Alexander, if I was to say, oh, by the way, my pronouns are they, them, and you were like, I'm not going to call you that, I'm going to call you she, her because that's what you look like, we would just simply not speak to one another anymore. Like that would be the end of our relationship. We would not be friends. I would just be like, oh, okay, it's not worth trying to talk to you because you are openly willing to be rude to me. And that would be the end of it. So it's not like there would be an enormous punishment or backlash. I wouldn't go to the dean of students or my boss or whatever. I would just be like, okay, I'm just going to limit my time talking to you.
But like your co-host, do you believe that you are a man or a trans man?
I personally identify as non-binary and trans-masculine, which means I more or less not female, not a woman. I personally don't fully identify as a man. I often summarize myself as a trans man because it's easier for other people to understand.
Yeah.
And that's why I prefer they, them pronouns, but I don't get mad or upset if someone he, hims me because I look masculine. And honestly, part of it is like, this is why I think your reaction that like, oh, trans people get so upset. I'm like, I literally include he, him in my pronouns because I understand why someone would look at me and think I'm a he, him, and it does not upset me because it makes sense that they'd have that reaction.
Yeah.
Okay, but you saying that you are you are non-binary or you are a woman, even though you're from the opposite sex. Like, can I identify and be a child or a toddler tomorrow, and then say, actually, I want free food or sit on the bus for free, because some restaurants and bus services do have price differences to age. So can I just say, oh, I'm actually a retired person, I'm old, so I want my money now from the welfare state? Can I do that?
I think, Alexander, that you know that that's a bad faith example. I think that you understand that that's not the same and it's not comparable. Can you medically go and be turned back into a baby? Can you medically go and fast forward your aging? Actually, go catch COVID a few more times. And yes, you can accelerate your aging, actually. It's damaging telomeres, which is great. But yeah, so that's clearly not comparable.
Well, it is pretty similar to what you guys get, because you guys want to join like female sports or male sports, use women's bathroom, and you get things that the opposite sex are and you're into men for it because trans women want to be women.
You know,
Trust me,
do you know what it's called?
I don't want to be using men's restrooms. I'm
They're
forced to do that
disgusting.
now. It's a gross, horrible thing to have to do.
Yeah.
The downside of being trans masculine.
I don't know if you recognize this, Alexander, but what you've done this whole call is like continuously shift the goalposts. Like when we say like, well, all of these medical people say that like that this is good science, you just pivot to something else because we are correct and you're not willing to concede any point. So you're just like, well, I'm just going to shift onto something else. Are you like aware that that's something you're doing, or is that new information?
Well, my first topic was about pronouns, and then we pivot towards something else. So I wanted to go more towards pronouns again.
Yeah, but now you're talking about sports, right? Like you just swerved hard to a different topic, and we have, I don't think that you have really responded at all to what we have said about like we don't bother to correct people about pronouns. We don't consider it like this egregious thing, and you haven't really responded to that. Your response to that has mostly just been to bring up a different topic.
Well, that's just you, because there's a lot of people that do make a scene out of being misgendered.
It really doesn't happen that often. And again, people are allowed to have feelings. People are allowed to have a bad day. You know, if after of hundreds of thousands of times that trans people get misgendered every single day, and that's probably an understatement, if like 3 of those times go viral on the internet, it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, I'm gonna hazard a guess that we know more trans people than you do, and have more data points. And
just guessing.
I do not see people getting upset in the way that you see. What happens is maybe there's one fringe case that gets recorded or amplified online, and then everyone thinks, "Look at this angry trans folk," but you don't see the thousands of times that people are misgendered and just kind of like nod and move on. If you heard me right now, I'd be like, okay, like that doesn't affect me. It reflects you. Like I don't have to interact with you at work. You're not a friend of mine. You're not a family member. And the times that I've gotten misgendered, I just correct people and we move on. I mean, I'll put this example out there. My father, unfortunately, has really bad Parkinson's, Lewy body dementia, and despite being and just turning 80, having dementia, he still remembers to call me his son, and he hims me and calls me Jay, even though he knew me as a different name and different set of pronouns for 30 plus years. I transitioned very late in life. How is it that my father with dementia can remember and put forth effort? It's because he loves me and respects me as a human being and can see how much happier I am now that I transitioned. That he was like, as long as you're happy, I'm happy. And that's ultimately the defining thing here is like, if you want to treat someone with disrespect, you can do that. Like
it's not illegal.
Be disrespectful. You just might not make as many friends. You might not have people want to interact with you, and that's just a consequence. Just like, you know, we could have heard you this whole call and been annoying and like just chose not to because we're choosing to treat you with respect, even though you're not giving back to us.
Yeah, I can see that.
Well, Alexander, I'll let you get your closing thoughts in, and then we're going to move on to our next call, all right?
Yeah. Like, I don't have much else to say. But, like, no, I don't think I have much else to say.
Okay. Hey, you know what? I'm not going to be here next week, but we will have other hosts here next week. If you want to call back and talk about the trans sports issue anytime, I don't know if this time slot makes a lot of sense for being in Norway, but, you know, if it makes sense for you to call back again another time, then we are more than happy to continue hashing out those conversations.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Alexander. Have a good night.
Good night.
I think it's like midnight there. Like, I don't know exactly, but I think it's quite late in Norway right now.
Thoughts.
Yeah. But that's part of why we do the show early in the day is because we started out with a host in the UK. So we wanted to have it be, accessible for people in the European time zones. And there is a lot of TERFs over there. So sometimes it still benefits the show in terms of getting more, spicy calls. That's kind of our bread and butter. I think this call is going to be more on the educational end, but we will go ahead and talk to, I think it's Loki. Loki, he, him from Norway, again, wants to talk about how sex is not binary, which is perfect because you're live with Luxander Moss and Dr. Jey McCreight, who can tell you lots of science things. So Loki, is that how you say your name?
Yeah, hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you just fine. Lay out your question for us.
Yeah, by the way, it's 10 p.m. In Norway right now, so...
Okay, not as bad as I thought.
Yeah. No, but I just wanted to ask, because when I search if sex is binary, I read that there is a lot of debate about it among scientists. But now that I can talk to are you a biologist, by the way, Jay?
Yes, my PhD is in human genetics.
Mm-hmm. But now that I can talk to a biologist, I could ask, is there really much debate about if sex is binary or not?
Yeah, so great question. I like to say, a simple way to explain it is that sex is bimodal, not binary. And what that means, if I wish I could draw on the screen right now, is that you have two buckets where most people fall into one. I didn't really do a good job of staying in frame.
It's like two hills next to each other, but there is like a space on either side and in between. Yeah.
And so they're kind of buckets that most people will fall into one and most people will fall into other, but they're going to be tail ends that don't really neatly fall into those buckets and a center point where they can even overlap. And so we know that about 1% of people are intersex, where they don't neatly fit into one of these buckets. And part of the reason behind this is when you say, what is sex? There are a lot of different variables that go into it. So some people assume sex is just is the gametes you produce? Is it sperm or egg? And that is one of the few variables that is pretty discrete where there's a binary, except there have actually been cases of some people who are born with both sets of gonads, which is another variable. Like, do you have ovaries or testes? Some people can have both. There is, in addition, there's chromosomal sex. So do you have usually XX chromosomes produce a female and XY produce a male. But even then, there are exceptions. There are people who are XXY, XYY. There are people who are genetic chimeras, and some cells in their body could be XX, while other cells in their body could be XY. And then there are people, you look at genetic sex, not just chromosomal, where there are people who are born with XY chromosomes, but they are missing what's called the SRY gene, which is the switch that turns on typical male development. So you can have people who are born looking female, assigned female at birth by their doctor, and they don't figure out until puberty, or they're trying to conceive and into adulthood, that they actually have XY chromosomes. And I could list so many more little examples like that of people who don't neatly fit into either binary bucket. And often these people, again, don't even know it until they get older, or if they get some sort of testing, because they can, seem pretty, quote unquote, normal developmentally. And so I like to think of it as when you're first learning any subject in school, you're taught an oversimplified version of that subject. So when you're first learning genetics, maybe in high school, maybe, I don't know if you ever did a Punnett square in your science class, but it's you learn about Mendelian genetics, where the father passes down one gene, the mother passes down the other, and things are either dominant or recessive. And you learn this very simple way of explaining how genetics works. But then I learned as you go and you study in college and then you go study your PhD, very few aspects of genetics actually function that simply. It's like you're originally taught that genes are kind of like a light switch. They're either on or off, or they're dominant or recessive. The reality is it's a giant Rube Goldberg device of all these different genes interacting with each other. We often call these like polygenic traits because it's multiple genes, each tweaking different aspects. And like when we look at any sort of behavioral trait, so even like extroversion or willingness to openness to trying new activities or neuroticism, we see that part of this is genetic and part's environmental and part is learned. And even gender and sexuality is like that. It's not like this gene will always make you 100% male and this gene will, and if you don't have that gene, you'll be female. There are all these exceptions. And so practically, just to do a research study, scientists often do treat sex as binary just because most people fall into a binary. 99% fall into a binary. And so if you're doing like a research study just for purely logistical, practical reasons, you could see that the sign-up form might not ask you if you're intersex or might not ask you if you're trans because they're just assuming the vast majority of people coming here are not going to be an exception. But just because that assumption is being made just for purely simplicity's fact doesn't negate what is actually happening in reality, which is there are people who are these edge cases that exist. Does that kind of answer your question?
I guess, but the more because I have asked this, I think I called last week or over last week. I called and I think I asked a similar question back then, but I have a pretty terrible memory. But essentially, why don't we just like say that? Why don't we just use, for example, chromosomal sex, that someone is a biological man if they have X in their chromosomes and XY if they have a Y in there, they are a biological woman.
I think you mean it the other way around. But who's going to pay for that?
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. I think I did the same mistake last time too.
Yeah, it's okay. But my question, Loki, is like, first of all, who's going to pay for that? I live in America. We have a private healthcare system. We don't just do genetic testing for funsies. Even in your country with a national healthcare system, is that really a useful way to spend taxpayer money to karyotype every child before you put a sex marker on there? And then, like, what do you do when you find out that actually there's a much higher prevalence than we originally thought, because we don't do population testing on this. So we don't actually know population numbers for like how many XX males there are with a transverse SRY gene. We don't know how many XY females there are out there giving birth unassisted to XY females, which we have several case studies on that. But like, unless you're going through fertility struggles, people don't really find out that they have a chromosomal anomaly in this way. So in a practical sense, just financially speaking, that doesn't really feel like it makes sense to me. But furthermore, what do you do with all of the XX males and XY females, which is the opposite way that you think of it, and it's just because a translocated SRY gene or something along those lines typically. Do we now like do we assign somebody with a fully functional uterus and ovaries, do we assign them male because of their chromosomes when their phenotype is the opposite of that? Like, it's just practically nonsensical, in my opinion.
Yeah, I just thought that it would be nonsensical to say that a woman is someone with a functioning uterus or that can give birth, because, not all women can do that. I just thought it was like a more better way, maybe, that you would classify the sex of someone. But yeah, I can see that it's not very practically useful. I can see that.
Yeah, it's also that a lot of exceptions exist. I would suggest to other listeners also to check out Mrs. Jackie, is it Blanks? Yeah, Blanks on Instagram, who's an intersex activist. She uses she/her pronouns. She's identified as a woman her whole life, and she later found out that she has XY chromosomes. And there are a lot of people out there who that is their story, is that when they're born, a doctor looks, they're like female, they go through a whole life female, and then it's not until adulthood it's a shocking discovery to them to realize they have XY chromosomes even though they have developed female. And so there are a lot of exceptions, and I always say for people who want to do like chromosome testing to get to the bottom of it, they're often like, especially in US politics, which is what I'm more familiar with, like there are a lot of Republicans who are like, we should chromosome test everyone. I'm always like, you first. Who's ready to have a surprise? Because you never know. You never know what surprise you're going to come up with. We don't do population-wide genetic testing. And I actually saw this when I worked at 23andMe for almost 6 years. And we had people who would sign up to get the kit and spin in a tube, and we would be sometimes they would label themselves as male, but they were coming up with female chromosomes, or they labeled themselves as female and they're coming up with XY chromosomes. And our customer service would reach out and be like, hey, we're getting a sex mismatch. They check, like, did you actually spin this tube? Was it mislabeled? Did you have like a partner who did the kit at the same time and you swap samples? And like very gently be like, hey, what's going on? And there are people where this came to be a surprise to them, that they did not have the sex chromosomes that they thought. Like, this isn't even just a trans issue. And we found this for not just gender related issues, but not to be a 23andMe shill. I know a lot about this because I worked there for a while, but like there were some other diseases where, because we were testing everyone and getting genetic information on everyone, our data, I don't work there anymore, their data set would look different than the data sets of people who were enrolling for a research study on that disease, because of the same. Like, think of like, who are you sampling? So if you know you have something, you're signing up for a study, you're going to be enriched for certain things, but you are not capturing all the people who might have that same genetic mutation, but since they're not actually expressing the trait, they don't sign up for a research study. They're in the pool of controls, but that actually gives really important information, because there's something going on in that person's body, either other genetic variants or something with their lifestyle, that made it so that mutation didn't turn out and show the same trait. And so this is actually something geneticists think about a lot, is that there is a lot of hidden things going on genetically because we don't sequence the genome of every single person when they pop out. And if we did start doing that, we would see way more surprises and way more variation than we think. That's pretty much how biology always trends, is in a direction of things being more complicated than we originally assumed, not more simple.
I burn to find out how many trans people have a chromosomal anomaly. Like, I deep somewhere in me, I'm like, I want to know this so bad, but I don't think we're ever going to get that. Not in my lifetime. I don't think we're going to get that answer.
Well, there have been some preliminary studies that have come out. And for example, I know that people who are XXY, which is often called Klinefelter syndrome, are much more likely to identify as trans feminine than people who are just XY. There have been other studies where trans women, and these are smaller sample sizes, and so whatever I do a genetic study, again, this isn't like you have the mutation, you're definitely trans. These are like, it increases the likelihood, but they found that trans feminine people are more likely to have mutations in androgen receptor genes, which that's what receives testosterone and activates because of it, so that really makes sense. Another study showed that trans men are more likely to have mutations in one of the CYP genes, which again is in hormonal processing. And so there is something going on biologically to why trans people pop out trans. I don't like to hype it up too much because I think then that also people are like, oh, let's go cure it. And like,
Yeah, sure. That's always the risk with this. Yeah.
And it's, again, it's not like when people first started studying like what makes gay people gay, there isn't one gay gene. There are lots of different genetic variants that can make you more likely or predisposed, but like your environment and like the hormones that were around you when you're in utero and so many different factors still come into play. And the same is true of transness, in that they've done twin studies and shown, a twin study is when you have a set of twins and maybe one is trans and the other is not trans, or maybe they're both trans, and you do statistics to see like if one is trans, is the other more likely to be? And we see that that's true. About the same amount of heritability or genetic influence as pretty much any other psychological trait, which is not super strong, but there's an effect. And so there is some innate thing going on here. And that's why I also say, again, I said this earlier, that this is why trans people have existed throughout human history, why you see evidence of us in archaeological sites and gods that used to be worshipped. Like, I'm Greek, and we had hermaphrodites in Greek mythology. Like, people have been talking about intersex and trans people for thousands of years across every culture, because the way biology works, we're going to pop out sometime. And I also like to say, you know, if heaven forbid someone went and eradicated all trans people, we would still continue to be born because of how biology happens, like because of how genomics works. Like, you're going to keep having trans babies because that is just how the system works genetically.
Mm-hmm.
May I ask for like some sources about people of intersex people, like people with Sawyer syndrome, for example, getting pregnant and having a natural birth? Because as far as I've read, it's they are able to get pregnant and have a healthy child, but they need donor eggs and all of that. Because I hear like constantly that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming that I have access to the same Google Scholar that you do, or even just regular Google search. I just will go and look up, and like there are like 2 or 3 case studies that tend to float to the top. But like, yeah, XY unassisted birth would be the keywords that I would probably start with. Yeah, so there are obviously there are going to be ones where it's like you have given they've been assisted, because also again, remember that these cases pop up in cases of this person was working with infertility and were able to get pregnant. So it's possible that they were being studied for infertility reasons, and then it's just like, oh, okay, we found out that this is now something that we could type up a case study for observing intersex traits. But yeah, I've got like on Google Scholar, I typed in XY unassisted birth, and I've got like several different examples. I don't want to, go through all of them right now because I think that would bore our audience, but that's a start. That's where I would start you.
Yeah, now I went to, I mentioned this to some friends, and then they said that they couldn't find anything either. So I guess it's just bad like looking around from our side.
And knowing what search terms to use, go for it.
What? Could you repeat that?
It's dependent on what search terms you use, right? Like I know what search terms to use to get a very specific result. So like XY unassisted birth, I'm like, okay, because I talk about this so much, I know exactly what to look for. So it might be an issue of not knowing what to look for. And like if English is your second language, then that's additionally like a lot of this research is obviously done in English or published in English. So yeah, but that's where I would start you searching, kind of get familiar with some of the basic terminology maybe, and then you'll have an easier time finding the studies. But that's just about as much time as we have for today, Loki. Do you have any closing thoughts before we move on?
Not really. I wanted to maybe kind of apologize again for kind of the silly questions, and also maybe Alexander. He's a good friend. So yeah.
Apologizing for your friend. No, it's okay. Yeah, no, this is where you come to ask the questions. We're here. No question is too silly. All levels of this are worthy of discussion and education. So we appreciate your curiosity on it, Loki. I hope you have a good rest of your night.
Yeah, you too. Or good day.
Yeah. Bye.
Yeah, bye.
Cool. Do you have any closing thought process? Sometimes we process the call a little bit afterwards.
Yeah, I'll just want to. I saw some people ask the influencer. They didn't catch her name, so I just want to throw that out again. Mrs. Jackie Blanks, like a blank page. Not associated with her, but I just really like her content. She does a lot of science education content around intersex issues, and I think she's a really good science communicator. So I am trans and not intersex, so I don't always want to speak for that community. So I just wanted to throw her name out there, someone who's doing good work.
Jackie Blank, she's great.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Cool. Are you prepared to perhaps launch into some spice?
Oh boy, that wasn't spicy enough.
No, this one I got a note from our producer. This might be a little bit harder to wrangle, but we'll do our best. We're gonna talk to we'll do our best. We'll talk to John, him from Missouri, who wants to talk about how our tax dollars should not support delusional mental illness. John, you are live on the line with Luxander and Dr. Jey McCreight. How's it going?
Going quite well, thank you for asking. Not as well as others, but I have no complaints. And really, who cares?
Yeah, I always say that. Who would listen anyway to your complaints? Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, and no one really cares.
For sure.
I want to try and keep this as basic as possible.
Sure.
One of you, I can't see which one, and I wasn't able to see, but one of you identified with your father, bless his heart, that he still loves you through dementia, that he loves you with your identity. I don't know which one you are. I think that's wonderful, and I do mean that. But the moral compass is really the direction that I believe this goes. And the direction that you spoke with Alex was politics. All the doctors around the world, hundreds of thousands of them. It's not political, it's monetary. And a lot of those doctors make great money, so they don't care. Just as long as they're following the laws of their state, their country, what have you, they're going to do the sex change because they're going to get that $250,000 for that operational procedure. So it's also coupled with the fact the doctors, going back to them for the moment, it's also a matter of playing what I feel to be God. I know we don't want to maybe discuss religion at all, and I'm good with that. But
I'd be happy to, but it's not our usual primary topic. But go on.
Right. So this is what I would like to say to you. You and I work together, and I lie to you. Will you ever trust me again?
I mean, that was a lot. That was a lot, John. And I'm not really sure how we landed where we landed. But, I mean, if you're what I feel like you're driving toward is the idea that if you were to affirm somebody's preferred pronouns, you would feel like you were lying. Is that where we're kind of headed towards with this?
Oh, 100%.
Okay.
I don't believe in lying to someone. I remember a case that went south, and this is very sad. This professional football player was dating a person that he visualized as a woman. That person had their breast augmented to look like female breasts. This man dated this woman, I'm using air quotes, introduced this person as his fiancée to his family and his friends and the whole 9 yards. And this went on for 6 months. And he was very true to his convictions of not wanting to, quote, have sex with that woman. So whatever it was that they did between each other is here nor there. Well, when they finally got to a point where they were just about ready to get married, and they thought, well, what the heck, we may as well jump in bed and have fun, he found out that that person that had the beautiful boobs, that woman that he introduced to his family and his friends, had a penis that was bigger than his. And when
I find this so
that,
fascinating because we don't have a name. We don't have a reference to anything. We're telling a story.
Hang on. Whoa.
I don't know what we're referencing right now.
I'm referencing a story. I could go on the internet and put in there football player that killed a trans woman. Okay, that would all be Google. You'd have to do, and you'd find out the guy went to prison, the whole 9 yards. This is a true story, but he lost it because he really thought he was dating a woman that he wanted to maybe have children with, and this person, of course, was changing to be a woman.
The reason why I'm kind of pushing back on this, John, I want to pause you because I kind of, there's a lot. You've thrown out a lot at the beginning of this, and I want to start trying to dig into it a little bit. I'm having a hard time with this example that you're giving because I don't know any of the details. Like, you're adding a lot of details that feel like they could be embellishments, and I don't have the ability to follow up. If you want to ask my opinion on like whether trans people should disclose when they're dating, that's a conversation that we can have. If we're having a conversation about the trans panic defense, that's a conversation that we can have. I think ultimately, and I think maybe what might be more beneficial and a better use of our time is digging into your belief that being trans is like a delusion and not like something that is well understood in the scientific literature as like a normal expression of having a very complicated human brain, basically. Like in our complicated social hierarchies that we create and stuff. So I would like to pick something to dig into, whatever thing you want to dig into.
Let's dig into that word love. And the reason why I want to do that is if I, being a father, by the way, were to have had children that, quote, questioned their anatomy to the point that they wanted to be the opposite sex, I would teach them, show them, and guide them every way possible to be able to, quote, love yourself as you are.
Every trans person does that before they come out. Just want to be totally clear. Every single trans person I have ever talked to before they go and transition, they're like, well, what if I just dress different and try to lean into my assigned gender? Or what if I just get married? Or what if I just have kids and like assimilate into the role that I was born into? And guess what? That usually results in them transitioning still, but just 10 years later. So that's not a reliable way to fix the problem based on like trial and error over and over and over again. In fact, we've tried lots of things, John. I can't remember if we've spoken before, but we have tried to, have people accept themselves through therapy, through like having a therapist guide them and embrace their biological sex. We've tried to put people on antidepressants, like, maybe you just need some Prozac. We've tried to put people on antipsychotic medication because it's like, well, it seems like you're having a delusion that's not in touch with reality. Let's put you on antipsychotics. All of those things worsen patient outcomes. And that's what we're talking about when we're talking about like, this as a medical issue, right? Because we don't treat trans dysphoria like a mental health problem for the most part. Like as far as the treatment and stuff goes, it's a medical, you check in with an endocrinologist rather than a psychiatrist for like maintaining your medicine and stuff like that, or your general practitioner as well. But that's, again, not a mental health professional. Your primary physician handles this care in a lot of cases. So I struggle a little bit with understanding where your position is coming from, that like, you know, that the idea that this is delusional or that it's bad or that you should just try to accept yourself. Like every single trans person I know tried to just accept themselves as they were before they transitioned.
And I just want to throw out there, just because my dad got brought up again, and I want to maybe tell a little more story here, that my dad was a very supportive parent, loving since birth, and very supportive of me, you know, when I was presumably a young girl, young woman, and I didn't transition until my 30s. So I spent my 20s desperately trying to be a girl, because that was what society wanted me to be. And that my dad was a big feminist and said, like, I support your dreams no matter what they are. Like, if me going into science, that was not something that was an easy path for a quote unquote woman, because it's a very male dominated female. He was always supportive of, like, do you want to wear a dress? Do you not? Like, I just want you to be a happy person. And I literally did not figure out that who I was until I realized that trans men were a thing that existed. Because I had spent my whole life wishing I was a boy and thinking that was just a dream that could not come true, or something that no one else ever thought. And I am a person who's predominantly attracted to men. And so once I even knew trans men existed, I was like, well, why would I transition? It is so much quote unquote easier for me to find a partner as a quote unquote straight woman attracted to men. And then I found out gay trans men existed. And it literally wasn't after a lifetime of desperately trying to be a woman and trying to be a woman in different ways, whether that was as a tomboy or as trying to be more feminine. And none of those ways worked. It was only until I finally accepted that I am not that, and I started testosterone, did a lifetime of depression, anxiety evaporate into thin air, and I finally was happy. And my family finally saw just how happy I was with my life from that small change. And that was even before I finally looked masculine. That was just being on a medication that worked with the chemistry of my brain, that I finally felt massive relief. And I share this personal story, but this is also what the scientific evidence shows us across thousands and thousands of other trans people, not just me, is that we can try to fake it as long as we can. We can try to be affirmed in the gender we're born at, but it's really only until we transition and get gender affirming care that we have lower rates of depression and lower rates of suicidal ideation. And so I guess my question back to you would be, do you not trust the science here, or do you not trust trans people when they say they are living happier lives? Like, do you want people to just stay sad? Is that the alternative that you would prefer? Or, because my dad's point of view was, I'm just happy that my child is finally glowing with happiness that I've never seen for 30 years. And it was such a visceral reaction that my dad was just happy I was happy.
I first, as far as the science goes, minuscule. Doctors prescribe medicines they know little of for diseases of which they know less of, to patients of which they know nothing about. That would be Voltaire.
But if we have decades of reliable evidence that this has worked consistently, 99% of the time this works, and we've studied it. We've actually been doing hormone therapy for trans people for longer than we've been doing heart surgery. So we're getting close to like 100 years of evidence that this works. So this is not just, well, doctors will throw whatever. Like, no. This is best as far as patient outcomes. Again, when we're talking about like, what is the result? Does the patient feel better? Are they more functional? Are they more successful? Are they performing better? That is the case for gender affirming care. So I just want to be clear. We're not just talking about like, well, doctors will throw whatever. We've studied this very thoroughly.
Okay, now there have been some that have gone through, children that have gone through that medical procedure that have regretted doing that. There are people that will regret it.
I have a
Not
question.
everyone's going to be happy, and I think we would both agree. I mean,
I want to ask you a
sorry,
question,
but it
John.
didn't come. Sure.
So about the children making irreversible changes to their bodies, I want to ask you some clarifying questions. Do you support football in high school?
Do I support football in high school?
Yeah. Do you think it should be legal? You know, do you think parents and children should be able to make that decision to put their kids in football in high school?
Yes, but it has to have conditions.
Sure, safety parameters, right? Even with all the safety parameters, John.
Nope.
Okay, what did you mean?
Nothing about safety. You look at the state of Missouri with the proficiency rating of 40% out of 100 being considered a passing grade.
Okay, this is not the direction that I'm trending. I understand if you're saying you're pro football because it enables you to get into college, right? But I'm trying to make a point about children making irreversible medical decisions and having permanent harm done to their bodies. That's the track that I'm trying to run down. So I'm just reeling you in a little bit. Because my question is, do you think that parents should be able to place their children in a program that frequently results in permanent knee injuries, and knee surgeries to correct knee injuries have a very high rate of regret, and they often can result in traumatic brain injuries, even with all safety parameters that we use? So do you think that children should be able to make the irreversible decision to potentially get brain damage?
Events are going to happen.
Yeah, because there's inherent risks, right?
With consequences.
There's inherent risks to life that you can't avoid. What about 5-year-old girls who get put into dance class and they permanently mess up their ankles? Like, even if you only do dance for a couple of years, you can still see the scans and there is still pain associated with your ankles being like meant to be up in point, you know, like ballet dancers. So do you think that it's acceptable for parents to put 5-year-old girls into a dance program that maybe the little girl won't even want to continue doing when she's 8 years old, that can result in permanent, kind of unfixable damage to their bones?
No, I would not want that to happen naturally.
Do you think it should be illegal for parents to put their little girls in dance class?
Well, I think sometimes a gene pool isn't a good positive gene pool, meaning that people with lesser IQs have a tendency to breed, and when they do,
we're just doing eugenics, John. We're just doing eugenics. Is that where we're going with this call?
Well, no, we're not going to go with eugenics at all.
That kind of is it's kind of what you're setting up.
There's always going to, no, it comes down to the fractured foundation of family in our nation, which is why we have the problems that we have. I have seen a man with a beard and mustache, dressed in a tube top, miniskirt, fishnet, and where this guy...
I think what you're saying is that you don't think it should be illegal. You don't think it should be illegal for parents to put their kids in dance school. Hold on, I'm trying to keep things on track here. I'm sorry, John.
I don't think it should be illegal.
You don't think it should be illegal because you think that parents should be able to make and assess what is best for their children, knowing the risks involved with a given choice, right?
Knowing the risk, but to a certain point, the parents got to listen to the kids. When the girl says, I don't want to dance anymore, or the boy says, I don't want to take piano anymore.
That's amazing, because that means that you are supportive of trans youth transitioning when they're young, getting access to evidence-based care.
No. See, that's where I completely draw the line. And the reason why I do draw the line,
but how is it different?
is because their brains haven't fully developed till they're approximately 25.
Permanent ankle damage, permanent brain damage. You are okay with children making decisions that can result in permanent brain damage, and you think that's okay, but you don't think it's okay for them to do this under medical advisement, medical care, with their parental consent, and listening to the child.
I just want to throw out there that studies have shown that children have a sense of their gender identity at age 3 or 4, and that includes
Yeah.
trans children. And it's not every single trans person doesn't necessarily obviously know they are trans that young, often because they have no point of reference. But there are lots of that's basically when your gender identity is baked by that point. So the idea that like their brains aren't done developing, the gender part of their brain is done developing by that, and that's what the studies have shown.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 3 to 5 years old is what the studies say.
I'll go with that. So I think the person that was speaking earlier was the individual with the beard, correct?
The person who was just speaking was the person with the beard. I'm the person without a beard.
Yes, okay. There you go, because this is where I can easily relate. Don't get me wrong. I can easily relate with you. I'm a man. I see you in a bar, and I want to have children. Now, you don't know that just yet, but we get to go on a couple dates. And then I finally say, I want to have a child. And you say, I'm sorry, but I can't have kids. Okay. Now you could say, well, then maybe we can adopt. Or maybe you still have your lower organs. They're still intact. They haven't been fully modified.
Or we can save our gametes too. Like we can save our genetic material. Lots of trans people do that too.
Okay. I hate to look at that. I hate to see how they preserve those cryogenics or
it's just regular IVF stuff. Just pretty normal IVF stuff.
But the thing is, it's the deception. I'm a man. I'm looking for a beautiful woman. I see you as a beautiful woman, and I want to have children, and I want to be, quote, with a beautiful woman like you. And then when it comes down to it, like I said, let's just say you haven't changed anything down there just yet, and you drop your pants, that's going to throw me through a loop. It makes me think that someone's been deceptive to me, that they have been a prevaricator to me. And in doing so, it would enrage me to a degree. I mean, personally, I would never put myself in that spot because I know.
John, do you think that trans people aren't aware? Do you think that trans people community is very small, which means that any individual trans person is only a couple of degrees separated from a woman who has been violated or had violence visited upon her because of trans panic like this. So for the most part, if we're wanting to swerve into talking about disclosure again, yes, we will all generally agree, trans people, for safety reasons, that disclosing early on is important. Like most of us are not in this imaginary situation where we're dropping our pants and we've never discussed like our genitals prior to this moment. And like, honestly, that fits into a broader conversation about sex, like openness that I would like to see of like, talking about sexual preferences, because here's the other thing. This is like going to maybe blow your mind, John. Lots of trans people do not want you to touch their genitals that they were born with. They're like, no, don't touch it. Don't look at it. Don't talk about it. We're going to do something else. And like, that is a conversation that should happen while everybody's pants are still on. Like pants on conversations. Like, are we going to use a condom? That's a pants on conversation. What genitals do you have? That's a pants on conversation. So like from a sex education perspective, of course, I'm going to advocate that people have those conversations and also advocate that they be safe. Lots of trans people just put that they're trans in their dating profile. Is it her fault if she put trans in her dating profile and you still swiped right? Because the majority of men do not read profiles. And like, it's as far as deception, you're like, oh, I want to be in a relationship with a beautiful, fertile woman. Is a woman who's infertile deceiving you if you go on 3 dates and she doesn't feel like that's date 3 material? She waits until date 4 to be like, by the way, I can't have children. I just think it's an uneven standard that is not getting applied. And also, again, this is a bogeyman situation of, if I was about to have sex with the sexiest woman and then I found out that she had a big penis that's bigger than mine, this is silly, frankly.
Yeah,
well,
I just want to
actually, I can offer a true story with myself and a buddy of mine. He was a guitarist. We met these 2, quote, women. And I was with the woman, and we decided, the 4 of us, to go back to one of the girls' places. And the next, before we could get further down the road than maybe, I'd say a half a mile, they were in the back seat kissing. he put his hands up her skirt, found basically a sausage, and proceeded to beat the livid daylights out of this man.
What's your
'Cause he's
position
just
on
back
that?
there hugging and
What's your
kissing.
position on the violence, by the way? Are you like
my
pro?
position
Are you
on the
pro
violence-
violence in that situation?
No. What I am is you made a bad choice, meaning my buddy did. Not that he should have been able to tell offhand, but
Hey, I have a
it
question,
was
John.
the
I have a
embarrassment.
question. Do you think
Yes,
that if
I
you're
did
the
not
kind of,
agree with it at all.
I want to ask a question, John. If you're the kind of man who would become violently enraged if you found out that a woman was trans and you really wanted to fuck her and it turns out that she's trans and you touched her penis, do you think that maybe it might be important for you to start proactively disclosing that to women that you date? Like, by the way, I'm violently transphobic, and if I find out that you have a penis, I might beat the shit out of you. So just be aware of that before we get started dating. Like, do you think that maybe that's your responsibility to disclose that information?
Well, I think that would be possible. Yes, I think that could be.
Okay.
Personally, I'm not. I mean, I've never been in those positions. I think of Danny Bonaducci, who picked up a prostitute, found out it was a male that was servicing him, and he just went ballistic on that male dressed up like a female prostitute. That's a fact. Danny Bonaducci of the Partridge Family. Different people behave and interact differently. Me, I'm Mr. Not Impressed, so it takes an awful lot for a woman to even get my company the next night for dinner, if I even think of asking her to. In other words, I've gone through my life not celibate, but very, 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 very choiceful. And yes, I think that somewhere along the line of the conversation, you know, I would ask, how do you feel about, to find out whether or not that person is, in fact, maybe they are, in fact. I'm overlooking maybe an Adam's apple that isn't too big, but maybe they are, in fact, transitioning. But I think it really comes down to honesty. And sometimes it's very difficult for a man or a woman that maybe wants to have babies with the man that she just fell in love with this beautiful beard, and she loves his bald head. I'm talking about the other host, by the way.
Yeah.
You know, he's got a gorgeous beard and beautiful mustache, a gorgeous bald head. Oh, that's so masculine. I want him to be the father of my children. And then all of a sudden, you've got to turn to her and say, sorry, I've got a fake one, but it will never give us children.
I think I would also just throw out there, not everyone wants to have children, even if they're cisgender. Like, long before I figured out I was trans, I never wanted to have children. And so that is just a discussion you have with someone when you're deciding if you're romantically compatible with them, regardless if they're trans or not. I feel like it doesn't matter what gender is involved. It's just something you either want out of life or not. And I also feel like there's a bit of a straw man here of just this idea that trans people are tricking people and never disclosing and lying and dishonest. I know, at least me personally, if I am ever going to cross that line with someone, I personally make sure to disclose, because heaven forbid, I don't want to quote unquote surprise someone who's about to beat the shit out of me. And I feel like I know a lot of people are trans people who operate the same way, and that, like, I always make sure, and I'm in gay male spaces with gay men who are expecting me to have certain parts and might not know immediately if they are coming up to flirt with me because I look very masculine. But if anything is progressing past just starting flirtation, I make sure to say, "Oh, do you know I'm trans, right? Or have you ever hooked up with a trans man before?" And I will tell you, the vast majority of them are just like, "Oh, cool, okay." Like, people care way less than you would think. So I think maybe you want to reflect on, like, why you care in such a visceral way. Like, to me, it's no different than someone just maybe isn't into you, like, or you're not compatible. So if you find out something, you're like, "Oh, that I was looking for, I will now move on." flirtation ended. I don't see why there's such a visceral response.
Yeah. And to be clear, John, you're kind of creating some examples from a while ago. So culture has shifted on this a bit, where trans people are much more likely to be proactively disclosing. But, even disclosing can put you in danger. Even when you're trying to do the right thing and say, hey, by the way, I'm trans, maybe you're just flirting in the bar and the guy punches you out when you disclose in the bar, right? So it's a very delicate social situation of trying to figure out when it's appropriate to disclose, especially if you meet someone spontaneously and you don't have the benefit of like, hey, it's in my dating profile, and we have a text conversation before we meet in person, right? So it's a delicate balancing act for any trans person trying to, navigate the world. And man, isn't it such a fucking burden that anytime we want to, we don't have the option to just casually hook up with people without having to have this conversation and have to worry about our safety. And this is something that, of course, women deal with all the time anyway, just non-trans women, and the whole, how do I date somebody who might hurt me? That's something that a lot of gender minority people have to navigate already. So, but yeah, John, I'll go ahead and let you get some closing remarks in, and then we're probably going to go ahead and move on for today. All right?
Sure. Again, I believe it's the confusion. I had a friend of mine, he was gay, got beaten up to the point of death. Absolutely hated it for that man. He was a kind man. And because a person's choice of lifestyle regarding sex and sexual activities, I think it's the confusion on both sides. And it's the deception on one side. And the other one, even, it may be lying to themselves. Like, I'm thinking about that football player. He really thought he had a beautiful woman that he was going to marry and get kids with. And again, found out it was a man and murdered them. It's just a matter, and you said this earlier, it's a matter of respect. If I have a party at my home and I know I'm going to bring gay people to my home, the only two things I request from them is that they just don't show that public display of affection in front of my elderly family members and the children. Once the children go, once the elderly people go, and it's basically the in crowd, as one would call it.
John, this is a little bit much for closing remarks. This is a little bit much for closing remarks. So, I would like to call in. I would like you to call in some other time to talk about the homophobia. I think we should dig into why you think it's inappropriate for children to see a gay couple being a gay couple. So, but thank you, John. We appreciate your call, and we'll talk to you again sometime. All right.
Peace.
Okay. Well, that was a little bit more controlled than I thought it would be.
I don't know if you know, so there's a point where I'm like, I'm just gonna pet my cat.
Yeah. I saw you're angling to see the kitty. Yeah.
Luxander, take this one.
Yeah. You're tempering me today. I'm usually a little bit spicier, but you're your energy is kind of bringing me back to a place of equilibrium, which is not. It feels good for me personally, internally, because I don't like being angry.
I just try to stay chill.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's a point where maybe I'm dissociating slightly and checking out, but that's okay.
No, it's understandable. No. Yeah, we do have some more DNA type questions for our last two calls. Lines are closed. We are getting close to our super chats portion. We only have an hour left of the show, and about 30 minutes of that we try to spend on super chats. So $5 or more, we read those aloud, and you can vote #Team J or #Team Lux. And whoever loses that silly scenario has to defend a position that Arden will put a poll in the chat eventually. I don't know if it's in there already, but and you guys will be able to vote. So yeah, all that stuff. And don't forget, even though it's a little bit later in the show, clicking like still helps. That still is a benefit. And also, I never mentioned this, but you should go to our patreon.com/calltheline and support us for $3 a month or something. It's, it helps benefit the whole show. Eventually, we want to do a convention and an in-person convention, and you guys supporting us over there is kind of the number one way to do that. So check out the Patreon if you want to get more. Indeed. Are either of these two jumping out at you right now of the two calls that we have left?
Let's look. Either or. I feel like my answer is going to be short for either of them. I don't have a long answer, but I'm curious.
Yeah, we can get into the discussion a little bit. We'll see. All right,
Yeah.
so we're just going to take them in order then. Let's talk to Jason, him from Massachusetts, who wants to know about intersex conditions. Jason, you are live on the line with Luxander and Dr. Jey McCreight. How's it going?
Hi. So it's funny that I'm calling in. My username is actually Jazz Dog. I think Lux knows who I am, but this is
Jazz
going to be a really
Dog!
quick call because, yeah, it's me.
Cool. Awesome. Well, lay it out on us, Jazz Dog. What's up?
I'm just calling because I was born, or before I was born. It's funny because in an earlier call, Lux said like, "Oh, people don't get like chromosome tests for funsies," which is still true, but my parents were actually ones that got me tested for funsies, and it turned out I was one of the very, very few people, not that few, but pretty few people who had XYY chromosomes. And I was just wondering, because I have always wondered, does that make me intersex? And because it's kind of weird for me because I don't really feel different at all. The only difference I have is I'm much, much taller than the rest of my family. I'm 6 foot, and then my family's like 5'4", 5'3". So I was just wondering, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. The short answer is I think technically yes, because it is anything out of what is considered the most common XX versus XY. But I think it would also, there is a level of like self-identification within the intersex community as well. And I think
Right.
I have heard from some people who are XYY, like if your biological, features are still typically male and you identify as male, maybe you would not identify as intersex because you still pretty much fit into one of the buckets. There's also the opposite end where there are people who are XO, where they just have an X chromosome instead of two of them, and they still develop mostly typically female, but often are shorter. It's kind of the opposite of what you have going on being taller. And
Right.
it's called Turner syndrome when you just have the one X, but there are some who they would not necessarily consider themselves intersex because they still fit into a relative bucket of female, quote unquote. But I guess the long answer short is maybe technically, medically, someone would label you that way, but that doesn't mean that you necessarily personally have to label yourself that way in terms of like a community. I don't know. I see nodding from Luxander. Is that
Yeah. I mean,
more like
I think about this a lot because of PCOS or PMOS as it's called now, which I'm pretty sure I have, and like other people in my family have it. I have a blood test that I've been putting off to find out what my levels are for some of these hormonal markers. But you can guarantee that if I get a diagnosis of PCOS or PMOS, I'm gonna immediately start saying that I'm intersex. Like 100% that's gonna occur.
Right.
Because it's like, and that's something that's kind of debated even in the intersex community. And it's again, one of those situations like Jay was saying that like, there are the majority of people who have PMOS would probably be really upset at the idea that they're intersex, or that they have a difference of sex development or whatever you want to call it. So like the majority of people who have PCOS are probably going to be like, no, I'm a woman, I'm female, even though they have a hormonal endocrine dysfunction that can result in infertility and has like impacts on their reproductive system. It's like very much a sex-related developmental disorder. But for me, I would be like, hell yeah, because for me, it's weirdly like, I don't know if it just like validates my transness or like it validates some of my theories about transness that like, my mom having PCOS and having higher levels of testosterone while I was inside of her belly, like that I might be trans because of levels of testosterone that my brain was exposed to. So I'm like looking for that, I like wish I had more free money just around for me to get this testing done. But yeah, so it's a completely an identification issue, so if you're like uncomfy with that, if it doesn't matter to you in your life, it's not medically impacting you, and you're like, I just want to say I'm male. Like, you could even be like, I'm double male. I have 2 Y chromosomes.
Yeah, I
yeah.
say that sometimes in like the chat when people are talking about like, oh, XY is 100% male, and it's like, oh, I'm XYY. I'm more male than you. It's like
Exactly.
It's arbitrary, really, when it comes in my case. But I just kind of see it as like a cool fun fact about myself. I still align with just being male and being man gender. But it's just a cool little quirk about me that's the way I see it.
Yeah, and there are probably so many more men out there who, just have no idea that they have an extra Y chromosome floating around in there, because we just don't test them, or they don't have any sort of symptom that would prompt testing. So that's why I always say, if we went and sequenced everyone's genome, we would be finding way more surprises than we expect, even beyond having to do with sex chromosomes. People have all sorts of inversions and duplications, and there are things called ring chromosome. Like, there's all sorts of like stuff that's going on out there. We are just barely scratching the surface. So yeah, sometimes, don't feel like you have to be defined by a medical diagnosis. It's not always the perfect Venn diagram overlap with identity. So yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, that's really just a pretty simple question, and I just wanted to say hi to Lux because we know each other. Anyway, thanks for taking my call. I really appreciate it.
Sure thing, Jazzy Jazz. I'll see you in the chat.
All right. See you later.
Cool. All right. Well, we have one call left, and it might be another kind of short one. So maybe we'll languor our way through the super chats. It goes down the lazy river our way through the super chats today. So let's go ahead and talk to Ashley, she, her pronouns, from Maine, who wants to talk about chimerism. Ashley, you are live on the line with Luxander and Dr. Jey McCreight. How's it going?
It could be better.
Living in America, that's like the poster slogan for everybody in America. Could be better. Could be better. But go ahead and lay your topic on us.
So my topic is about chimerism, specifically absorbed twin syndrome. What would be the best test to run to diagnose that? Like, if you could pick any test and you can only ask for one test, which test would you ask them to run?
Ooh, that is a good question. I hate to say, I don't know if I have a good one test, because the reality is you would have to do multiple tests, at least on multiple different tissue types. If you were doing let's say, okay, the one test is DNA sequencing, but chimerism is where some cells of your body have a certain genome and other cells in your bodies have a different one. So either, like, the one example I gave was you could be XX in some cells, XY in another. Or sometimes it even gets more complicated than that, where it's maybe it's XY in some and XYY in other. There's all sorts of combinations you can do. Usually people only find out their chimeras if they are getting a test done on, for example, if you have a blood test that's sequencing your DNA, but then you also do a swab, which is using the skin cells of your inside of your mouth on your cheek. Those are different organs. One's blood, one is skin, and you could find a mismatch potentially after sequencing those. Or let's, for example, say you are signing up to be a donor for an organ donor. You have a friend who really needs a kidney transplant, and you think your blood is a match based off a test they did in your blood. They might end up taking a sample from your kidney and finding out, wait, this doesn't match, or any sort of if they're sampling some part of your body for some other reason, maybe it's cancer, or one of the things that actually has popped up in a couple can you believe it type cases is there have been cases where women will give birth and then their children will not genetically perfectly match as if they're the mother, and it's because their ovaries are different chimerically from their blood, and the blood is usually the test they're doing to do genetic testing, but the ovaries had a different genome than their blood. So I wish I could give you a simple answer, but chimerism is inherently not simple. It's inherently very complicated. So the answer really is, if you had a test where you're testing lots of different tissue samples, and again, this is something where it's probably way more common than we think. Either the absorbed twin or just like some mutation that happens really early on in development and gets propagated down. But we don't regularly go and test every single tissue sample from every single person. We barely even test one tissue sample from a single person. So maybe in the future there'll be a test that makes it more obvious.
Okay. And I have one more question, if that's okay. Let's say hypothetically you had multiple gonadal tissues, and one was female gonadal tissue and one was male gonadal tissue. If you sampled that gonadal tissue, can you check that for chromosomes?
Oh, you definitely could. And you may find that, yeah, there's a mismatch there. I think like that is how at least some certain like intersex conditions happen. Is you have some that are like most people typically start in a more like female development. Not most, like human development starts standard female, and if you don't interfere with it, you're going to become female. But the thing with biology is lots of things can happen. So you can have that like duplicate, and then maybe, or if there was like an absorbed twin thing, it would react differently to testosterone because one has a Y chromosome in it versus not. There's just all sorts of exceptions that can happen. So I think I don't want to speak for all cases like that because I'm just not entirely sure. But if you can imagine an exemption to the rule, it probably exists out there somewhere, is how I like to think of biology.
Awesome. Thank you very much for the information. And I was thinking along the lines of a buccal swab too, which is that cheek swab, I believe. But the one that scares me is that fish test, because that's when they take multiple samples from multiple places, and it kind of makes me think that you'd be used as a pincushion.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's usually not fun giving samples from other parts as much.
Yeah. Well, Ashley, do you have any closing thoughts? We are going to open the lines up for one more spicy caller. But I'll let you get your last words, and if you have another question or anything.
Well, I guess chimerism is kind of a difficult one to diagnose, and I guess do they ever diagnose it based on symptoms, or like at least give them an idea that you could be chimera just based off of symptoms?
I'll say I know one of the most obvious ones is when people sometimes have like patchy skin coloration, where like that is like the most visibly obvious thing, or hair color, when it's something with pigmentation on the outside. Because like if you have one genome that's saying to have like pretty light colored skin and the other genome is saying to have darker skin, you might have like, you know, like a mixed skin coloration instead of like a more universal tone. And so with like skin and hair, it's not really like diseases, it's more just like what color skin and hair you have. But
yeah,
other things are just more complicated because they are internal and not easily perceivable.
I think I know someone in my community who has chimerism, and I think that they were tested and diagnosed because of like intersex condition stuff that started to come up when they were a teenager. So yeah, like if you're like growing facial hair or something like that, yeah, as somebody who was assigned female at birth, then yeah, I think that does happen occasionally, where like symptoms, quote unquote, in the sense of like you're having an atypical sex development, and then they test and find out why, you know?
Yeah, and I saw someone in chat ask if it's always an absorbing a twin thing, and the answer is no. Sometimes it's just when your cells are dividing really early in development, you can have extra copies, or you might lose certain copies. And so it's not always because of some other twin getting absorbed. That's one way it can happen. It could just be like when mitosis is happening after fertilization, things sometimes get shuffled around like in a non-typical way, and then end up being different from like that point forward.
Interesting.
Well, cool.
Well, the only reason why I asked about the absorbed twin is because I have fraternal twinning on both sides of my family, and my father was the twin.
Okay, so you're like wondering if that could be part of your history and story of chimerism from a twin that got absorbed. Yeah.
Yeah, and twinning itself there's a genetic predisposition, so that's why twinning runs in families, is because there are genetic variants that make you more likely to twin. But I don't have more details than that. That's all I know about it.
Awesome. And thank you very much for your information. It's definitely helpful, and maybe I might ask for a buku swab. Maybe might get some results.
Yeah. Well, good luck on your journey, Ashley. And, I wish you all the best. And, let us know if you want to call back sometime and we have some free time at the end of the show. We might chit chat a little bit more and discuss chimerism further, because it is a really interesting topic.
Awesome. Definitely. Thank you.
Thanks, Ashley. Have a good one. Bye. Sometimes I'd accidentally cut off people when they're saying goodbye. That's my bad. I'm so sorry. I'm not trying to be a jerk. There's just a delay. Yeah, so we do actually have a little bit of time. We have lines open, so we'll shoot the shit for a couple of minutes here. I think Arden just reopened the lines just to see if we can snag another like maybe 15-minute call.
Only spicy call, no chili pepper call or whatever the hell, no advice call. Let's like if you're actually
ghost
bring
pepper only. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't want your jalapeno level of spice. We gotta crank it up. Ghost pepper or above. Habanero or above, I think, is a fair metric. So we do have a little bit of time. 720-619-2288 is our number. Or if you're outside the US, we do have our web caller, although it is getting much later for you Europeans. So what the fuck are you doing calling us? Actually, I want to ask Jay your opinion. I'm just going to give it like maybe 3 minutes. And if we don't have a call within the next like maybe 3 to 5 minutes, we did just have one pop in. So we'll see what happens with that. Jay, do you know about the Holocene? The proposed like changing how we say the year?
Oh, no, I have not heard this.
It's basically this premise that like if we were to just add 10,000 to the year, like I open the show now by saying the year 12,026 because it contextualizes human like modern human history in a way that makes us feel like much more cohesive and close to our ancestors, I think.
Yeah, no, because I know that's like when quote unquote civilization kind of sprung
agriculture,
up across
really,
human, cultures. Yeah. No, I have not heard this. That's interesting. Kind of like that. I mean, it does make it feel like we're more in the future that way.
And then we don't have to do stupid math for the BC CE change or whatever. Yeah, I think it's kind of silly the way that we do it currently. So I don't know how we could qualify time before 12,000, but whatever. Sorry, go ahead.
We can't even get people to use the metric system though, so I don't know, but that's gonna
happen. Right. This is just going to be one of my niche nerd things that I die on the hill for, and nobody is going to get on board with it. But I think it's just correct. Like I think it's just objectively correct.
I like it.
Yeah. Okay, we actually do have a caller. So lines are now closed. We're going to take this last caller for maybe 10, 15, maximum 20 minutes. And then we're going to move into our super chats. So don't forget to get your super chats in and your votes. $5 or more, hashtag Team Lux, hashtag Team J with an E. And we will get around to that in a little bit. Right now, we are going to talk to Ronnie, he, him from Washington, who wants to talk about puberty blockers. Ronnie, you are live on the line with Luxander and Dr. Jey McCreight. How's it going?
Lux, and Jay, you guys, I'm a big fan, Lux. You guys, I watch you all the time, and it's nice to be on with you, Jay. Good to have you, friend.
Hey, nice to meet you.
Thanks, Ronnie. Well, why don't you go ahead and lay your topic out on us? Tell me what's on your mind.
Okay, all right. You guys, just the idea of giving kids puberty blockers. Like, are you proposing an accelerated puberty or just a shortening there of the puberty, because what's commonly said is that kids go out for puberty blockers and puberty results as normal. So like if you say been on them for 2 years and you've cut 2 years out of their puberty, like, and we all puberty has a more or less settled beginning and an end. There's a certain age at which it'll be resolved and you're not going through puberty anymore. So like, are you proposing like an accelerated puberty? If puberty resumes and 2 years are missing and goes normally, as you say, is it accelerated or is it just cut short? And I find it hard to believe that everything's going to go fine. Please go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I'm sorry for interrupting you. What I was going to say is that
no worries.
Don't think of it as cutting out 2 years. It's just delaying the process by 2 years. So,
right on.
For example, let's say you have a kid at 12. They're really showing a lot of signs of being trans, and you've gone through a lot of therapy, and you're like, you know what, this seems very likely to be a little trans girl, and we're going to put her on puberty blockers just because we want to give more time to make sure that this is a trans girl and like they do have this identity and that this lasts throughout time. They would be put on blockers for a number of years until they're old enough to make a more like firm decision of like, yeah, I am a trans girl and I want to start on estrogen or progesterone or a combination of those instead of developing in a male pathway, which would be the default without puberty blockers. Once they start estrogen and progesterone, it would still take the same number of years for them to go through puberty. It just will have started later in life. And I'll just say the same thing it happens to adults when we go through our quote unquote second puberty, at least especially for trans masculine individuals. Like I did not transition till my 30s, but when I started testosterone, it took, in the beginning, you go through the same kind of puberty that a young cis boy would go through, and that like my face actually got very round for a while, got like chubbier.
Baby face,
I didn't like sprout this beard overnight. In the beginning, it was like one little hair sticking out, and it took a lot of gradual time. And it's only now that I've been on T for like 5.5 years that I have a thicker beard. And I will say I'm going faster than average because I'm Greek and my family is very hairy. And like even within trans men, there's going to be diversity of how quick puberty goes, just how within cis boys, there's a diversity of how quick puberty can go. Like some cis boys, I know I had a friend in high school where he had a thicker beard than I have now when he was 17, and other boys who were 17, had one facial hair sprouting out of their face. So, so long story short, it's not like cutting off time you would develop. It is just pausing the process to make sure you really want to go through with that and have fully made the decision with all the information you have before going through with it. Lux, I don't know if you want to add anything else.
I want to let Ronnie process.
Yeah, process, Ronnie. Sorry, I ramble.
Right on, friend. Okay, right. Would you agree with me that like there's a certain age at which like you're gonna stop going through puberty? You're gonna stop doing the puberty development stuff?
Well, yeah, but that's different for every person. Sometimes it starts when you're 6 years old. Sometimes it doesn't start until you're 16,
Sure. But yeah, like that's not the, at a certain point, there's a certain age, usually in your like 20s, it's done now. It's all wrapped up.
Sure.
Yeah, and the thing I would just note is like there are trans people who start transitioning later in life. Like even though I was in my 30s, there are people who transition in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s even. And if you are doing hormone replacement therapy and you're taking those hormones, your body is still going to activate as if it is undergoing puberty, even if you're 60 years old. You're going to go through those changes. That's just like what the body evolved to do when it's undergoing a hormonal change like that.
Yeah.
Fun facts, fun facts. But yeah, but this just seems like okay. So you would agree that like in our 20s, puberty is resolved.
Yeah, like I guess so, but there's still metabolic changes that we're going through. So it's like,
Sure.
what are we calling puberty? Like obviously, like I'm not as skinny as I was when I was 18, and I probably never will be again because that's just what it is like to be in your 30s with an estrogen dominant system. So yeah, like I guess I'm trying to figure out what you're driving toward, Ronnie. Are you basically saying that like it's unfortunate that if somebody is on puberty blockers for 2 years and then they decide that they're not trans, that their puberty is going to last a little bit longer than other people's? Because, like, again, that just is a normal variation.
I'm just trying to drive at what you guys have been driving at. What's being proposed when you say that we can pause the development that's supposed to be happening? Say they take puberty, and they pause through like 11, 12, 13 years old, and then it resumes and goes back to normal. And you say, are you proposing an acceleration? Because they've only got so many years to go back to normal. So they spring back.
So what we're saying, Ronnie, I just want to be clear. What we're saying, here's what happens. Here's how the medicine works, okay? We identify what stage of puberty the kid is in, and they can't be given blockers until they're in Tanner stage 2 of puberty. This is a very specific stage. They can't start it earlier than that, so we're not giving it to kids who haven't started puberty. So what we do is we give them this
10,
medicine.
11, 12, right now.
Right, yeah, around that age typically. Okay. So we pause the puberty, and then when we remove that medication, it just resumes where it would already have done, and it proceeds at the speed that it already would have done. So like if it's a little person with a uterus, maybe if they started puberty at 11 and they were about to have their first period at 11, that just gets delayed until they're 13. Does that make sense?
Sure. So you're telling me that the experience of an accelerated development in the limited amount of time they have?
No. So basically, I think what you're hitting at is if it takes you 7 total years to go through puberty, let's say most people start puberty at 13 and it ends at 20. This would be a situation where if you were delayed to start at 15, then puberty wouldn't be fully resolved until 22. So yes, we are talking about just taking the whole process and it's going to proceed at its normal speed once we stop the medication. That's how it works. So it doesn't accelerate. It does still take the same amount of time.
So you're proposing a prolonged puberty, essentially.
Delayed is the word that I would use.
That was my question. Was it are you
and I want to,
or are you stretching it out further than it would normally go?
Yeah, it's just happening later. Like the onset of puberty is just happening a little bit later in this situation. Now, I will say, Ronnie, and this might blow your socks off a little bit, I think that 2 years is an unethical amount of time to force trans children to wait, because it means that they're not able to go through puberty at the same time as their peers. Like if we start a kid on puberty blockers at age 14 and they have to wait 2 years to get put on cross-sex hormones, and this is a persistent trans identity, we've determined that they are truly trans. The fact that they have to wait until they're 16 to proceed with puberty when they're behind their peers, that sucks to me. I think that I honestly think that the barriers are way too high in this situation.
For sure.
And I think it impacts trans people more than it impacts people who try puberty blockers out and don't. I want you to be clear too, Ronnie. We don't even give puberty blockers to children until they've already been seen by medical professionals for a minimum of 1 year. So it's like you're already only getting put on that medicine if we're 99% sure that you are persistently trans identifying, and then you just get 2 extra years of evaluation. So the overwhelming majority of kids who go on puberty blockers remain on a trans pathway of cross-sex hormones and everything. The amount of times that somebody's on blockers for 2 whole years and then decides to just resume their normal puberty, vanishingly few times has that ever happened.
Well, okay, sure. But I'm just saying, I guess I got that 2-year number from you guys. You propose that's worst case scenario.
They shouldn't be on it for longer than 2 years. To be clear, there are medical complications of being on blockers for longer than 2 years. It causes bone density problems, basically.
Right on. I'm just saying, so you're telling me that the development that they would have gotten in that 2 years will make up for it in their 20s.
Yeah, basically, it's just gonna happen later.
Yeah, it's like if this is the puberty they would have gone through, it's not like this. It's
like it doesn't get shorter. Yeah,
it's this. It's just like shifts down the timeline.
So what am I hearing about? Like with cases like example that everybody knows, Jazz Jennings. What's going on? Dingling didn't develop, and then it wasn't big enough to even do the thing with the stuff and the Frankensteinian surgery.
that's a little bit rude. I think you should know that that's a rude thing to say to trans people.
Okay, I'll take it back.
Yeah, so Janet Mock is another woman who I know of who transitioned as a child, and she had to have supplemental testosterone prior to her vaginoplasty because that same issue happened of like the androgens not affecting the penis to make it grow enough that you can do a penile inversion vaginoplasty. So yeah, that medically that is an issue that people deal with on a case by case basis for sure. I do think it's weird to think about children's genitals. That's weird to me.
So somebody's got to.
I mean, I don't think so, actually. I don't think so, actually, that's a thing that we need to think about. So that's a little strange, but yeah.
Glad somebody thought about my genitals once upon a time. I'm sure glad nobody turned it inside out or anything crazy.
Statistically, Ronnie, Ronnie, statistically, the tip of your penis was mutilated without your consent when you were a baby. Statistically, that probably happened to you. Yeah.
That was wrong. I'm gonna have to agree.
Yeah, okay. I'm glad at least that we can agree that impacting children's genitals in that way is bad, because a lot of the times people are coming at me about trans surgeries and they're pro mutilation of penises of babies. So,
but why didn't Jazz Jennings spring back in her 20s or whatever and like get the development that was required? Like, I just find it hard to believe, and feel like that big famous show provides evidence that you're not gonna develop the things that you need to develop, guys, even if you want to do the weird things that you want to do.
I think she's fine. Like, I think that she got the surgery she wanted. Like, and also there's other methods besides penile inversion to get you a vagina, but that's maybe a little bit too much for you, Ronnie.
You just get a little bit of your colon out of you. There's all sorts of things. Medical science is a wonder in 2026, guys, I'll tell you.
Yeah, for sure.
There we agree. I trepidatiously say. I don't
know. Isn't that something? High five on that one, guys. But I'm not trying to give you guys too much crap about just that's a hard one to sell or buy. Is that you're gonna make up for all of it, even though you blocked out 2 years of your development? I feel like this is hubris, guys. The arrogance.
I don't really understand. I don't really understand why it would be a problem to say we're going to give you extra time. Because here's the thing, Ronnie. Here's why we do the blockers. Here's why. Because for those kids who actually are trans, and again, the overwhelming majority of kids who get on puberty blockers for trans-related reasons, they do end up persisting in their trans identity. I think actually the majority of kids who get put on puberty blockers are just with precocious puberty that started at like 5 years old. And so for medical reasons, they're getting put on it in that way. But yeah, the reason why we do that 2 years is because for those trans kids, that 2 years, if they were to be proceeding along their natural development, that would be body horror. That is, I know that there's medicine that could stop all of this crazy stuff from happening to me. Like, oh my God, for those, who identify as trans boys, they're like, oh my God, I'm growing breasts. And now they're doing unsafe things like binding their breasts with duct tape and ace bandages and breaking their ribs because they're distressed, or they're like not able to take a shower because of the distress of being naked and seeing their naked body with the sex characteristics that they don't want. These kids perform worse on their grades. They perform worse socially. They don't have as many extracurricular activities. So we're talking about like 2 years of a child suffering with a bunch of mental health issues that they did not need to be experiencing. And so like that, when we're talking about a trade-off, you're like, wow, it sounds so bad that puberty would start 2 years later. And I'm like, you have no idea what that 2 years would be like for a child who didn't have access to that medicine. It's not good.
Man, it's still growing up, guys. It's just hard to scare me with
Ronnie, these kids, make suicide attempts. Like, we're not talking about like, oh, it's just the normal teenage stuff. We're talking about kids who like try to cut off parts of their own body because they don't have access to medical care. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not like frivolous.
sure
And
there are
yes,
all
of
kinds
course,
of
puberty is
distress.
hard for everybody.
It's pretty
Changes are
frivolous.
happening and it's weird and you're bleeding from places and you're growing hair in weird places. This is a completely separate scale of severity to that. So maybe part of it is just like the lack of personal experience. I'll assume that that's kind of where you're coming from on this, but that 2 years is torture if you don't have puberty blockers.
I went through puberty. I got experience.
But not as a trans person. That it's a completely different experience to be like, I'm looking forward to growing a beard versus like, oh my God, I've started growing a beard and I need it off my face like immediately. Those are two completely different experiences of puberty.
Yeah, okay. It strikes me as a super freaking privileged position, you guys. There's so many
Then why is
bigger
it that
hardships in the world.
why is it that there are so many trans people of color and trans people who are poor? How is it a privilege when most trans people are working class?
Dude, I mean, there's all sorts of overlapping reasons. There's all sorts of narcissism, all sorts of autism. Everybody, they got their own reasons. This is a freaking
Well,
social
Ronnie,
phenomenon, guys.
I honestly think that you're drunk, and I don't have time for this. We're gonna wrap up the show. So thanks, Ronnie. Bye.
All right.
Don't call us drunk again.
Yeah, don't. Please don't call us drunk again. We don't need that energy.
Sorry, there was a point where I tapped out, and I'm like, I'm gonna pet the
No,
kitty,
you're fine.
and I'm just gonna like, yeah.
Speaking of kitty, oh my God, you're not smart. You just came into my grasp. Oh, baby. Listen, oh my God.
Kitty.
The little cry she just made is so funny.
Aw.
Are you a good girl?
Oh.
Everybody, I just added some stuff to my Throne wish list. So throne.com/Luxander. I want to give her those little speech buttons. I want to equip this little terrorist with speech.
Oh, this one I don't want to talk. She would just make demands the whole time.
Yeah. She already knows words. Like she's like pretty smart for how dumb cats are. You know what I mean? Like they're pretty dumb in that way. But you're such a good girl. You're my baby. I love you, Mina.
I see a Team J. So question is if they're more is it the loser has to give a talk or is it the winner has to give a talk?
The loser. Yeah.
It started because it used to be a punishment. It used to be that we were like, oh, you have to eat like 50 sour candies. But then I did that once and my tongue bled and we were like, okay, we need to tone it down. We need the punishment to be a little more lighthearted.
Yeah, no tongue bleeding, please.
Yeah, no habaneros, no silliness, like nothing crazy. So yeah, just a silly position. Is the poll up in the chat for what's the silly positions or what are we doing on that?
Yes, currently Lindsey Graham, queer icon, is the position you have to defend. The alternatives are he in the military is a forced femme conspiracy and Biden government-funded trans communes.
Okay.
All
times.
very fun.
Yeah. All right. I will get us started and I will control the super chats for this. So Joshua with the $5, thank you, says good afternoon, just checking in, but work is super busy today, so I may not be as active as usual in chat. Hashtag Team J. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Hope you're having a good day at work. And you can see it either on the Zoom screen or in our staff window. It's at the top of the funding queue part. We can switch reading them.
Oh, this is a great question. Trans autist here. Jay, as a geneticist, do you know anything about genetic links, comorbidities between autism, ADHD, Ehlers-Danlos, trans folk? The short answer is yes. There is a Venn diagram here with a lot of overlap. For those who don't know, is it he? I don't know how is HEDS. I don't know how to say it out loud. I read it, but
yeah, HEDS. Yeah.
Ehlers-Danlos, it's a connective tissue disorder where often it's marked by a hyper flexibility and sometimes like differences in scarring and all sorts of it's like a big family of things.
Like connective tissue is all of your tissues. So if you have a connective tissue disorder, you have all kinds of issues. Like you can have bowel problems and issues with skin and scarring and stretching skin and maybe even your brain. Like,
some vascular ones. I've seen some trans people describe it as like brain flexible, body flexible, gender flexible. And I think this is something that it's really, studies have only just started coming out showing that there is this huge comorbidity. So people who are autistic, I said autistic, are much more likely to be trans and are much more likely to have ED and vice versa. And I think the scientific community is at that point of where we're like, what's going on here? This is interesting, but I don't know if people have figured out exactly like what mechanism is yet. So I do think this is something that probably like a stay tuned, more research to be done. I'm very curious about it because I've suspected I may have this as well, in addition to the autism and the transness. I have some hypermobility things, and I know a lot of friends who have these comorbidities. So I wish I had a better answer for you right now, but I think it's one of those things, again, more research to be done.
For sure. Yeah. I was talking to Erica, who's a primatologist, maybe I was just listening to them answering questions on the show, but she was basically like, some folks have suggested that maybe the autism thing is related to Neanderthal DNA, like that maybe the lingering kind of thought processes that we have that are like, it seems like just two totally different ways of processing information, but that it could be because of a prevalence of Neanderthal DNA, which is interesting because I think Neanderthals have also been studied to be a very creative species, like a very creative group. So maybe there is some kind of like flexibility that we have from Neanderthal DNA.
Yeah, could be. I also know that when you have an older father, like basically the older you are, the more mutations your sperm tends to gather up.
Yeah.
And older fathers are associated with children who have autism.
And other stuff, but that's interesting.
Yeah, there's like more genetic variants. So it could just also be like, differences in ways of thinking. And that I should be clear that mutation isn't always bad. Sometimes mutation is just different. And so I think when you're seeing like those differences build up, it could be from Neanderthal, but it could also just be from like mutations that have happened.
Yeah, very cool stuff. Poor Claire, thank you for the $5, says, if low T really causes all these horrible problems, why don't they want women on T2? Or is it fine for women to be depressed, low energy, fat, etc.? That's true.
And actually, there are more and more cis women who are starting to microdose T, or like get it prescribed, where they're not trans, they just need help with energy levels or
libido or something.
Libido. And I remember it was as I was going to the American Society of Human Genetics conference last year, I was in my like Uber ride to the conference hall, and the ad that was on the radio was all about like microdosing tea for women. And I was sitting there ironically thinking like, it's so hard for me just to get my tea as a trans man, but maybe if I just pretended to be a woman who needs a better sex drive and they let me have it, I don't know. So I think we're about to find out, again, more research to be done. We're going to find out all sorts of different things about how hormones affect us. And
it's an exciting time to be alive with no funding for any of our research grants.
Science.
Yay. This one's for you to read.
Oh, yeah. The 2004 BSG phrase is real. This has all happened before. It will happen again. Yes. I mean, we had our little trans utopia in Berlin that got crushed by Nazis, but it did eventually rebound, is what I tell myself. So, we can get through it.
Thinking positive. Thank you, Pip, for the £5, who says political correctness originally meant correct for the sake of politicians, not basic politeness. Reject real political correctness. # Team J. Yeah. That is really annoying that political correctness has just become terms for like basic fucking human decency.
Yeah, definitely a dog whistle. I'll also say I feel like I have more votes, but they're just misspelling my name. So we're gonna
count them as spellings.
A ballot count. Okay.
Yeah. It's all good.
I'm so excited for today's show. I can't wait to hear from Jay and his scientific experience. Thank you. Question for Jay, if it has been answered. What made you decide to go down the genetic side of biology? Thanks. I love that question. And, I think subconsciously, like at the time, I didn't realize it, but in retrospect, I was actually really interested in why I felt like a boy, even though I was quote unquote a girl. I remember being in high school reading my textbook, and they had a genetics textbook. They had a little blurb on androgen insensitivity syndrome, which is when you're XY, but you develop typically female because your body doesn't respond to testosterone. And I remember thinking as a 16-year-old reading this, is this what I have? Do I actually have XY chromosomes? Like, is this why I feel like a boy inside, even though I don't look like one? And I remember finding it so fascinating that these exceptions existed, that it wasn't the only thing that took me down studying. I really liked evolution in particular, and how it showed how we are connected to all other life on the planet, and humans aren't quite as special as we think. I really related to that philosophically. So, it's neat. How could you not like genetics? I don't know.
Yeah, that's cool though, that like your trans identity and like having not quite figured out how to reconcile with that, like spurred you into taking action to like learn more about it, and to this point where it gives you like a huge amount of expertise in a very specific field. And it turns out there is evidence, and looking at different like we always focus on the chromosomes and stuff, but looking at like things like estrogen pathways in the brain or gene receptors and like that kind of stuff. Fascinating how many points of, I don't want to say failure, but how many different points of development there could be something tweaked that causes this or may contribute to it, probably is more accurate language.
Yeah, because most genetic things aren't cut and dry, but there are definitely things that can nudge you in a certain direction. And at the risk of throwing out, this is a hypothesis I have. I think that there's a spectrum for autism. I think there's a spectrum for transness. And I think there are some people like myself where it is very innate and biological, and there are high levels of dysphoria. And like my brain really expected certain body parts that weren't there, and that was a huge point of dysphoria for me. And then I think there's some people where it's less of that, and it's more, and this is also why we see overlap with autism, in that it's more about not being rule following and not like necessarily conforming to norms, and it's less about like a bodily dysphoria. And I think there's like a smear of everything in between. It's like not just one gene doing each. So
for sure,
different shades of transness. Yeah.
I think we might need to go a little bit faster to get through these, because we have another show that we're going to send. Actually, I am about to be on Calling It Now with Jimmy right after this for another 3 hours.
Oh boy.
So
I don't know how you do it.
I take a 10-minute break and then we just keep it rolling. It is my most tiring day of the week for sure. And I go to the gym usually 4 or 5 days a week, so that's saying something. But yeah, don't forget to get your super chats in during this section, and furthermore, wait at the end of the thing, because we will just send you right over to Jimmy. I think it is me and Jimmy today. So, okay, let me get on this one. This is Erica Vixen for $5. All feelings are valid. Not all actions taken because of those feelings are valid. Hearts, Team Lux. Thank you. That's very true. Oh my God, I scrolled down like a silly person. There we go. There's a new one.
Oh, also Team Lux. Oh, I don't want to read that one. No.
Thanks, Alice. The Eagle fan with the $5. Alex, give us one example of when someone yelled at you because of pronouns. Give the full example so we know you didn't knowingly do it to be an ass. Exactly. Much ado about nothing, like making a big deal out of nothing. I love your axolotl. It's so cute.
Thank you. Yes, that's one of my props.
Someone asked in the chat, where did you get it from?
I hate to say Target. I cross enemy lines. Please forgive me. It was really cute.
I know. People are like, where did you get it? And I'm like, Jeffrey Bezos.
Yeah. Sorry. All trans people are asking for is kindness, respect, and bodily autonomy. And it's something we give to everyone. Team Lux. Yeah. just be nice, please.
Just be chill. Just be normal, you know? Thank you for the $5 from Agents Miskatonic, who says Alexander has the intelligence of a child, so not that much of a jump there. You know, they're still cooking. When they're 18, I think their brains are still cooking a little bit. That's all right.
My dad, who thought I'm delusional, called me last night that he had me as a daughter. He talked to a guy whose son is trans and changed his mind. Oh, that's great. Aw.
That's cool.
Yeah.
It feels good because like sometimes it feels so fruitless having these conversations, but I like the primary benefit is that we embolden and empower you guys to go out in the world and have these conversations. And like this is the kind of stuff that keeps me going right here is like, this probably doesn't have anything to do with us, but just like the fact that there's people out there who are doing the education and kind of trickling down or paying it forward on that is amazing. So I'm so glad that your dad made that progress. I don't remember whose turn it is. It's my turn. SJL with the $5 says, John seems to be referring to Menti Teo. He was involved in a catfishing incident. He never met his fiance and there was no murder. Hashtag Lux. That's what I'm saying. I'm like, I'm skeptical of this story that you're telling, this tall tale about 6 months of enfiancement. There's a word for that. Yeah, I don't know. That was silly.
But yeah. Seemed like a scopes thing we had to check. Is it rude to refer to a trans person by their dead name / pronouns when talking about something that happened pre-transition, or does it vary by person? I think in general, most trans people I know prefer to not use their dead name or the other pronouns. I think there might be some exceptions, or they want to do it. I think the safe bet is to avoid it. Unless like that explicit person like is a really good friend of yours and explicitly told you that they're okay with it.
Yeah. We're going to typically err on the side of not dead naming in any situation. But yeah, as a trans person, I've seen like very femme presenting people be like, yeah, when I was a little boy, and they find it fun to trip people up like that. But I think other than that, you want to err on the side of not doing it and ask and stuff. So yeah. Thank you, Aaliyah. True Silver with the $5 says, my gender transition and finding out I can be a woman is accepting myself and loving myself for who I am. My desires and feelings are part of me. Exactly. Yeah. Thank you for saying it. We were all thinking it.
I'm sorry, I have not been reading the names. They donated, I've been skipping them. Ice Axe, 852. Generally did not love myself until I finally came out and started transitioning. I didn't even realize I didn't love myself before. Hashtag Team J.
That's really
I hate to say I relate to that, but man, it's powerful to finally be on the other end of it.
For sure. Joshua for the $5 says, called the John Eugenics pivot at the beginning of the call. Woo, woo, woo. Hashtag Team J. Thank you. That's rough.
But Potato Boy, always been an ally, but after massive weight loss thanks to GLP-1, I actually started understanding body dysphoria, euphoria, and felt like I could be a turf bridge. Team Lux, guess gotta defend always.
I didn't know that was the rule, but okay. Thank you, Erica, with the $5 says, John is 100% driven by desire, lust, not love. Yeah, Arden commented in the chat, like the weirdly detailed explanations of all these situations where someone found out that someone else was trans. That man is a chaser.
Beaker Squeakers to Team BB. I think that's for Pixel for the price of one this week.
This is a null vote because we both have hashtag Team Baby.
Yeah.
We both have produced Baby. I don't know where she went. She realized that she was going to get picked up again if she was nearby. Baby! Mina is my first long-haired cat. It's been an interesting learning experience.
Oh, that's an adventure, yeah.
Yeah.
You can see the pile she has left.
Yeah. Thank you, Erica, who says, John is describing a Crocodile Dundee situation. Sure.
Fishy, hi from Malaysia. I suspect I have PAIS. Reminds me of my very late and slow puberty at 19 years old. Give everyone a free test if they want, yo. Team Jean J. Yeah.
That's fun. I like Team Jean J. Little X-Men reference. Thank you, Erica, for the $5. Says, John, it's time for you to come out and transition. Let go of the hate. It's okay to be a trans woman and still like women, either cis or trans. That's an interesting. I didn't pick up on that, but if someone wants to read it that way, that's fine.
Silverbow. John only sees women as sexual objects that are only here for his pleasure and is afraid he'll be attracted to a trans woman. He's a sad little man. Team the one with the beard. That's me.
That's transphobic of you to say. It's like, I'm transmasculine, and my dad, you can individually count his chin hairs, so I've never had a chance. I don't really want facial hair anyway, but like, I did do minoxidil for a little while, and it was just like, wow, this is not very fruitful.
The diversity within, again.
Exactly. Thank you, Mira, with the $5, who says, John's projecting, not wanting to receive what he puts out. Hashtag fake story time. Hashtag lies about condoning violence. Hashtag Team J. Yeah, I also think there was like a little bit of like violence porn in the way that he was describing it that was kind of icky.
Kind of unnerving.
Yeah.
Meg, the biggest confusion you have is that it's a choice or lifestyle, John. GFY.
It means go fuck yourself.
Like
yeah, because Jimmy, our kind of like CEO, is like not really into compliments, so he actually prefers it when people say go fuck yourself, Jimmy. So GFYJ is a very common acronym that we see in the chat.
Good. I'll know it's not me.
Yeah, it's not you. Yeah. Thank you, Majora's Casket, for the $5, who says, I trust an 18th century man's opinion when it comes to doctors. Anyway, here's why it's trans women's fault they get beat up. John, yeah, true. Hashtag Team Lux. I don't understand him. I never will.
Babs Beret, I've made it 42 years on this side of the gender fence, mostly by healthy paranoia. Team J.
Hell yeah. Joshua with the $10, free monies for Lux, but free vote for hashtag Team J. Thank you for the money.
I feel the love and support.
I feel like that was evenly distributed. Yeah.
Quantum Chaos. Lux, since we all know that the plural of anecdote is evidence, my partner has PCOS and we have a trans kid, so there's proof, ? And Team New Guy. Sorry, Lux. There is definitely something going on there. Trans men have higher rates of PCOS, so there's something hormonal going on there.
For sure. Thank you for validating my conspiracy theory about uteruses. Thank you, Erica, for the $5, who says, Ronnie, you're drunk. Go home. I did think he was drunk as soon as he started speaking.
He said it after you accused him. He was like, I may be a little drunk.
Oh, I wasn't even listening. That's so funny, actually.
This is the Eagle fan. I forgot to add my hashtag TJ. Welcome aboard, Jay. Hey, thank you for having me.
Hell yeah. Unrelated fun story. Thank you, Ice Axe, who says, my friend forgot the phrase chosen name the other day and called it my alive name, and I love that. Hashtag Dr. New Guy. Hashtag sick beard. Hell yeah.
Yeah. I like how people are being nice to my beard.
Yeah.
Legally Maud says, honestly, I think blockers are unethical. They're not for the child's benefit, but to convince the parents to allow their kid to transition. Hashtag Team Lux.
Truth. Spitting. Yeah. You're spitting right now. Erica says, it's 20 minutes. Shut down his drunk ass. Yeah. We did what we could.
So a quick hashtag Team Lux from lots of numbers.
Yeah. Thank you, Kelly, who says, great show. Hashtag Team J. Ooh, I'm going to lose today.
I'm feeling the love.
Yeah.
Gertrude says, Lux, I was the one who sent the Neanderthal autism super chat too. Team Lux.
Hell yeah, Gertrude. You got me really cooking on some stuff. I'm really like letting that simmer and thinking about it quite a lot.
I'm going to look that up. I'm going to do more research.
Yeah. Thank you, Christina, for the New Zealand $5, who says, just because I'd like to see Dr. J do the challenge, hashtag Team Mina Mama. Interesting. I hope she's not a mama. She's too young. She's too young and innocent for that.
Secular Feelinist. Nice to meet you, Jay. Hope you come on more. Hashtag Team J. I knew the kid would win people over. I cheated a little.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. It's acceptable.
All right. So, yes, your topic is Lindsey Graham, queer icon, and Jay is the winner. So let me get the thing up here. I know we're tight on time.
That's okay.
Oh, come on now. Okay, charging up the clock in 3, 2, 1, go.
I mean, Lindsey Graham, like, what a legacy. What a legacy to leave behind, right? Like, all of this anti-trans stuff and like the pro-Trump stuff and the previous anti-Trump stuff. What a fascinating character Lindsey Graham was. But what we will remember Lindsey Graham for is, listen, she's cunty, okay? It's like well known at this point that like Lindsey Graham was having gay sex with prostitutes. Like there's some delicacy around being a prostitute who's worked with a politician like that, a sex worker who's had that kind of experience they might keep it on the down low for the sake of like not getting sued or having their life ruined or having the CIA show up at their house or whatever. But now that he's dead, people have been confirming to the extent that they're able to do that they were hired by Lindsey Graham to do weird gay shit involving him wearing red lingerie. So listen, and like honestly, this is so funny too, because I think it was like the accusations around Lindsey Graham like cruising at airports that is like connected in my brain to when Jimmy Snow had the merchandise that said like you're a fruit, and like the accusations against homophobic people that they are actually just secretly gay. A lot of the time, I think that that's ultimately harmful, but it just happened to be true in Lindsey Graham's case. He just was a self-hating homosexual who wanted to do weird shit and was just like not able to square that with like the horrible culture that he was raised in and the terrible mindset. And it's so tragic in a way that like the hatred of oneself as a homophobe turns into like that as a person. Like what an obsequious, slimy, disgusting human being who I'm glad I no longer have to share oxygen with. Lindsey Graham, queer icon, may he rest in piss. I yield my 5 seconds.
All right. We got to roll out real fast. Jay, do you want to do any plugs? So as we roll out here?
Yeah.
Yeah. As you can see, I have my plug in the background here. This is my platform, Beyond XNY. It's on Instagram. It's on Blue Sky. It's also beyondxny.org if you want to join the newsletter. It just got started up this couple months ago. So stay tuned for new activity. I'm going to have things to help, especially other trans people in biomed, and try to do some community building. And if you want to find me, you can search for Jey McCreight on Instagram and Blue Sky 2, and I spout off there as well. So thanks everyone for warmly welcoming me. This was really fun.
Yes, thank you for being here. We appreciate y'all.